I'm kidding, we're pretty tame.
Reynolds has made my dreams come true. And I have given him what he desires most in return.
And what's that?
Every piece of me.
He's a very demanding man, isn't he? Must be quite a challenge to be with him.
Yes. Maybe he is the most demanding.
Me, the great hope is just people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them, and, suddenly one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart, and make a beautiful film with her little father's camera. To me, the great hope is girl in Ohio is going to be the new Mozart. To me, the great hope is people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making them. To me, the great hope is Ohio is going to be the new Mozart. To me, the great hope is people who normally wouldn't make movies are going to be making. To me, the great hope is one day some little fat girl in Ohio is going to just be Mozart. Normally wouldn't make movies in Ohio is making the new Mozart. Just people who normally wouldn't make Mozart and be making. To me, the great hope girl in Ohio is going to make a Mozart beautiful film with her little father's camera recorder, and for once the so-called professionalism about moving Mozart destroyed forever, and it'll really become an art form. That's my opinion.
So hello, my old so-and-so, as they say.
You all so-and-so.
I love that. That was, I don't even think I really paid attention to that line when I'd seen this movie in the past. It was really only this time where I was like, oh, that's such a funny little greeting Reynolds and Cyril have to each other. Like, and they always, sometimes they're even under the breath about it because they're like, all passive aggressive obviously is a big thing in this movie. He's like,
I think
my old so-and-so.
Sarah became my favorite. Like she became my favorite character. Get you!
Oh yeah, I got that's amazing. That's incredible. See, I didn't want to tell you. I was like, if she's probably gonna do it, I'm gonna do it too. I just don't want you to think I'm gonna do it, so that you actually.
You know I was going to. I haven't had a reason to wear a dress like this in like 2 years.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Look at that.
This was what I wore to the Oscars 2018.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Literally.
Uh-huh.
Such a weird movie. I was not expecting this. And I was expecting like not more fashion, but like more about the fashion.
Yeah.
There was a little bit about the fashion.
You should see my whole getup because I'm wearing
Ooh,
these,
look at your pants.
I don't have purple socks, or I did, but I couldn't find them, so I wore green ones.
Socks.
The purple socks are signature.
That would have been hilarious. Oh my gosh.
No, for sure. And these glasses are not reading glasses, so I can't really wear them because I'm wearing contacts under them. Well, no, they're real, but they're for nearsightedness. So I'm wearing contacts, and like I guess I could have taken my contacts out, but I don't like to do that. It's an unpleasant like little venture. So yeah, every time I actually look down to read my notes, I can't read them, so I have to just. But you notice how Reynolds just holds them like this all the time.
All of my notes are on my phone, so I'm gonna have to look at my iPad, see if I can access my notes. I think I can. I took the most notes of any movie we've watched.
I'm honored to hear this.
I'm
truly honored to hear this.
I knew it was P.T. Anderson. Mm-hmm. I knew it was DPL. And I knew what to expect from those two individually.
Yeah.
Who wrote this script? There's my first. Who wrote this script? That's
Paul.
What I wanted. Huh?
Paul wrote it. Of course.
Of course.
We're going to talk about this because, okay, so.
Oh, God.
I'll start with this. Now,
Here,
I wanted to.
Let me get my gown ready for this.
Get your gown ready. You have to make sure the fabric is just right, okay? No, honestly, watching this movie, and I'm not gonna be unafraid to lean into it because it'll probably be more entertaining, but I don't want to lean into it too hard because in my head I'm like, this could be a fixture of like this movie. Watching this movie makes me just want to pretend to be Reynolds or be Reynolds all the time, because I already think I have that side to me. So I'm just like, it's like, no, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. No, so
let's see how Reynolds you truly are. Let me go get a piece of toast.
Oh, no.
And see your reaction.
I almost just want to let you do it just for the bit, but no, please don't.
Yeah, I'm like, that was because, okay, I have been in relationships with and dated people who had OCD or like these little specific things really irk them for some reason.
Yeah.
And I thought I had been exposed to some weird, little quirk just in my own life in those relationships.
Yeah.
Wow, really, dude? You notice that? That bothers you? Okay. But the toast.
No. Well, like, to me, and we're gonna talk about it, but to me, the best part of the whole movie is the way that Alma starts to just like find different ways to snipe back, and like sometimes it feels just incredibly. And I have like a whole host of thoughts about like how this movie was presumably directed. I mean, there's some direct evidence I have of this, but it's mostly just reacting to what I'm seeing on screen a little bit. But it's like the way Alma will when she's that first toast scene with Cyril and then in the house, he's like, what are you doing? What is this? And she's like, I'm buttering toast. And he's like, it's like you're stampeding like a chariot through the living room.
Yeah. You said you might as well have like had some horses stomping.
Yeah, galloping through the thing. I forget the exact line, but yeah, it's pretty funny that way. That's just real funny aside. So I got this that like it's basically a tuxedo jacket, but it's just a jacket. It doesn't in this shirt, this new white shirt, like for Christmas. And I never had a chance to wear them. And of all things to wear them to the podcast, I didn't think it would be it. But I was like, this is perfect. I was like, I'm literally opening a new shirt that's been in the plastic wrap for months.
Oh my God.
For this. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you've noticed, Dana, but there hasn't been a lot of like black tie or party events in the last year.
No black tie
events noticed.
last year.
I don't know if you've noticed.
I think my friend that works for the Academy, the one that I went with, I think they did like a virtual one, or something like that, because he like they did a Zoom for like their employee people, so which was fun. And I have to say, I'm really glad that I got to go as like a guest. Yeah. Because I hope one day in my life I get to go as a nominee. But if that ever happens, I will be giving out snacks to everybody in the upper rows.
That's how. Yes, I agree. That should be.
You're there for 6 hours. So this was the dress I tried to hide the burrito in, and so the back of this dress has this like really thick liner. So I tried to stitch it to the top.
That's where you hide stuff.
I tried to stitch it here so when I walked, you wouldn't see the burrito. And
wait, hold on. Can you imagine? Yeah. So,
next time.
Wait, but how much then do you respond to, like, because Reynolds is explaining, he's like, you can hide anything in the lining.
You can hide anything in the lining. It literally made me think of
literally.
Yeah, dude. I should have done a beef jerky or something more aerodynamic. Why did I pick a burrito? I don't know. But yeah, the little notes he hides in the lining. By the way, my grandmother does that.
Really? That's awesome. It's probably an old thing that people have done.
I think it's an old-timey thing. Yeah. She used to do these like hand-sewn labels, first of all. So like if she made you something, the back of it would say like, made for Dana with love, and then the back would say like CC or something. And then, she would do that and they were like one of a kind little labels. They were just incredible. The label was almost better than whatever she made, because it was like, what? It's like your own brand. So it was really interesting that he hid those little labels in there.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I really loved that touch. That was the one, not the one thing. There were many things, but I think that was the most, like, the evidence of his vulnerability. That was the hard evidence of his pain and his superstitions and his vulnerability were those little, not cursed or like the names that he put, like all of that was like, it's his little good luck things. And I think that superstition for him plays a big role as a character. Just the fact that, what's her name? I keep forgetting her name. The his assistant.
Cyril, is that what you're talking about?
Cyril.
Yeah.
So she mentions multiple times that once his morning is ruined, it's really hard to get back on track.
If breakfast isn't right, it's very hard for him to recover for the rest of the day. And it's like the sternness, and this is a whole thing with Cyril's entire character and performance, Lesli Manville, I think. It's like incredible, like rigidness of like, it's not just like as a character trait in that sort of emotional responsiveness set. It's the way she holds her neck. It's the way like her chin just does not move when she like talks somehow. It's like, it's just this incredibly fixed, stern, with her ice blue eyes expression. And like, so that when she does even give you a tilt or a, like the scene where Alma comes in and says to her, and obviously this whole sort of even shot composition and back and forth of this scene is then replicated when Reynolds comes to her near the end of the film. When Alma comes to Cyril around the midpoint and is like, I have a surprise for Reynolds. I want you to help me. Like the way her sternness, like her shoulders just, that's all she does. Her shoulders just drop and her chin slightly lowers. And it feels like the most emphatic thing you've ever seen because of just how still she is at all other times. And you immediately know before Alma's even caught on to it, this is a bad idea, as if it shouldn't be obvious already. Even Alma knows it's a bad idea. She just is like insisting on denying, I think that's her. I think she is insisting on denying it at that moment, but I think she's also like what she says at dinner. She's prodding. This is that evening, that dinner. Is the conversation that a lot of modern couples have. I think it's the "what are we" conversation. Oh God, yeah.
That's
basically
what that was to me. It's like the "what are we?" Like, do you want me to leave because you're annoyed by me all the time? I'm in your way. You don't want to spend time with me. Like, that's basically what she's saying. Is like, you're giving me the signals that you don't want me here. So here's a nice dinner for you to break up with me because I think that's where she ended up. I think she had hoped that it would be oh my gosh, you made dinner, you cleared out the thing. Wow. And that was not what she got at all. And so she's like, well, I shot my shot. I gave you, I gave you the moments that I gave you some things that I thought would at least be a nice night. She kept using the words nice night. I was trying to just make it a nice night. She just wanted to have a nice night. And he couldn't do that.
Yeah, but like because
he was so concerned with where is everybody? What's going on? He can't just stop and enjoy dinner with her.
Well,
because
yes. Well. I think though the key, to me, like, well, I get what you're saying. I think it's like, I really do think she knows through and through that this is a terrible idea. Like she knows Reynolds well enough to know that. The reason that she insists on doing it and the reason that she fights to make it work is because it's that thing where it's like, I need it and I'm so determined to make it work that it's like, it should impact you and it'll, in that moment, fix you and change you a little bit. And I think I was more aware of this time when I watched it than I think I may have been other times past, because I hadn't seen this movie. I'd seen it a few times when it like came out in theaters and then like probably once or twice on Blu-ray like a couple months later, but I haven't watched it since.
You've seen this movie 5 times?
I saw the movie at least 4 times in theaters, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Great stories and great times about that. Maybe I'll get into. But I think what was particularly interesting about it is, and he says as much, even though you're kind of like your mileage may vary where how sincere you think he is about this. but I think he's relatively sincere. I think he really was when he first walked in there. I mean, you see it in contrast to other moments with him when someone does something he doesn't like. He's trying to do I'm going to pretend like it's not that big a deal. And I'm going to go along with what Alma's saying. I'm very confused and thrown off, but 100%. I'm going to go along with it.
Asparagus.
Yeah, but by the time he's cutting the asparagus, though, he is trying to passively aggressively get her attention about it. And he even says, I'm admiring my own gallantry for eating this.
For eating your buttered asparagus.
The way he says it's gallantry is just insane. Everything in that scene is insane, and we'll talk more about some of the other stuff. But, yeah. All good?
Thing is tipping to the side. I got a new one, and it took there was too many parts, so I just went with the old. It was taking me too long, so I just set up this old one because I was like, I'm already late. I can't figure out. There's like, not that I have to put together a whole tripod like it's that complicated, but it just had like a bunch of things like for the mount. I had to put everything together, and I was like, this is taking too long. So this old one, like sometimes we'll just get tired and want to lean.
Yeah, no, I hear it.
Yeah.
I was also just thinking about the fact that never have I been more disappointed that I don't own a bow tie, specifically a purple bow tie. I was like, do I own one? I'm like, no, you definitely don't. But I was like, what if it just magically appears?
Why am I surprised that you don't have a bow tie? Why? I mean, no shade, no nothing. I felt like you're the kind of person that might like own a few bow ties. I don't know.
Well, again, I feel like I'm the type of I agree with you, but I don't. However, well, you know what I do have, and it's very funny. And I got this for a costume, mind you, but I'm pretty sure I still have it, but I just was like, I don't know where it is. I don't have time to find it. I had a purple like ascot, like, you know, one of those like stuff. I was like, well, Reynolds does wear that. Reynolds wears his ascot with his pajamas. It's insane.
I was trying to. Oh, that's another thing.
Yeah,
like, he's trying to be a dick at dinner.
He's wearing his
when
pajamas.
He wears his pajamas, but then he puts a waistcoat
over
and
it. Yeah,
and a jacket on top.
I noticed that too. That's the funniest, weirdest thing ever.
He sees that she's in this beautiful red dress and says, "Oh, your dress is finished. It's well made. You look lovely," or whatever. And then he's like trying to keep his anger quelled that she made him dinner.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like surprises like that or whatever.
Well, you know, look, okay. And I don't, and this is another thing I got to try to avoid doing, but I'll lean into a little bit because it is probably interesting content. But I gotta be on Reynolds' side about this, just from my own standpoint.
About the dress? About what?
I fucking would hate exactly what Alma did too. I would hate it in the same way. I would just be like, you don't know. Yeah. I'm kind of like that. I'm like, when I walk through my door, I want everything exactly as I expect it to be. And if anything is off, it like bothers the shit out of me. And it could be a little thing where then I'll just go up and move it and fix it. But if it's like a thing where involving another person and the person has expectations of me and it's all these other things, I'm like, why'd you do this? Man, and I can't even imagine. Like, you know, that being said, I do not excuse any of his rude behavior after that.
Yeah, there was a better way to handle. There's always a better way. He could have said, "I really appreciate this, but for next time, I don't like it at all."
Well, the other thing we learn about him, and I don't think it changes even by the time the movie ends. I don't think it'll ever change. Is that he doesn't give two craps about being an asshole to anybody at any time. So I don't think that's changing. What has changed, we'll talk about, but.
Oh man. I do. Okay. I'm going to tell you what
go
I
through
think.
what because this is your first time seeing this.
You've seen this a minimum of 4 times.
This was probably my 5th or 6th time seeing it. Yeah.
I am a very big DDL fan. I am a very big PTA fan. And I am shocked at my own self that I had not seen this.
I was surprised you hadn't seen it either.
I'm fairly certain I've seen DanielDay-Lewis's entire catalog, but except this and one other, like 2 of his earlier things that are not available. I've watched everything he's done, and this was no exception to his exceptional performances. In my opinion, I think he did an excellent job, and I think what allowed him to really become this curmudgeon was that I initially thought this was based on a real designer. So I looked for his designer. It's kind of based on a few, right? Kind of put together, but it's not like this is a biography of this person, right? It's not like when he played Lincoln and he had to stick to a bunch of rules. Like there are rules, but it's not, you don't have to be historically accurate necessarily for your character. You can make some moves. There's a little bit of leeway here, I think, if you're not playing an actual person.
No, he's not.
It's not like Woodcock is not a brand. I looked it up. I was like, I want to buy a Woodcock dress, and you can't. They don't exist. Okay, so something that I really liked, and that I think is very, I want to say the word is like indicative of the 2 of them, even individually, is their DanielDay-Lewis and P.T. Anderson both tend to have this, in my opinion, love of the doings and love of the process of the action. Like they focus on the, as an actor, you call it your doing. Like, what am I doing right now? And what are my hands moving at? What is my character getting towards? And I think DanielDay-Lewis tends to, and P.T. Anderson, they like to linger on these moments of doing something that don't necessarily further the story, but this doing, these chores, I'll call them, are an insight to the character. And I got an insight into Woodcock immediately because he's got low battery. It's been charging all day.
It's all good. I'm
going to have to plug it in a moment. I'm going to tell you this little bit. So I definitely got those little inklings of who Woodcock would be in the very beginning. He's trimming all these nose hairs. He's trimming the nose hairs very meticulously. He's polishing the shoes. Like, this is a person who pays great attention to detail, who takes great pride in appearance.
Great pride. But wait, can I just interrupt real quick to just say, because you brought attention, obviously that's the opening sequence of the film. Mm-hmm. The piece of music, and we'll talk more about the music in general later, but House of Woodcock is what it's called on the soundtrack. And there's nothing quite like, and I did it today, and I've done it before, but not in a long time. There's nothing quite like getting dressed while listening to that. Like, it actually feels like the music was composed. I mean, it was because it was composed for that sequence and others in the film, but that's mainly that one of just like putting on your shirt while listening to that. And it's just like that beautiful piano and just like coming in, and you feel like all the seamstresses are walking up the stairs, and you like brushing your hair. I love how he has the 2-brush system for efficiency. That's crazy. I've never even seen that before. But he was just like, yeah. And you just have that, the opening shot of him. The opening shot of this sequence, not the opening shot of the film. We'll talk about what that is just him with the fucking shaving cream on his little shaving cream brush. He's which I didn't shave. I was very tempted to, but I was just like, I just want to do that. That's too far just for this. That's too far just for this.
That's too far.
Yeah. That's too much of like a affects weeks long of life decision. But yeah. Anyway, proceed on.
In the early sequence, there is a line that I very much identified with. And I think most designers, not that I'm a fashion designer by any means, but I think designers or anybody who's done any kind of modeling or acting, your costume, your clothing is your armor.
Yeah.
It's what projects what you want to project to the world, not what you are, but who you choose to show.
Yeah.
So that's your armor. And they mentioned that line early on, and I was like, absolutely. I think for actors, it's even more so, because when I put on clothes as an actor, I'm not putting on my clothes. I'm putting on someone else. I'm putting on this character's clothes. And then it's about using them and seeing how they would use them as an armor to protect themselves and how to survive their day to day and get done what they need to get done. You know, it's not necessarily about comfort, and we definitely see that in this movie. You see that every woman is, and I don't know if this is a P.T. Anderson choice, but they're all in corsets. They're all in the hosiery.
I think that's just a period and style choice.
Style, absolutely. But a lot of modern, some modern fashion designers will do something that looks like that, but is not, because it's much more comfortable. The modern way is like the boning is much more flexible, et cetera, et cetera. Watching just the posture of the women in this film made me think that, oh, they're not just having good posture, they're sucked up because of their linings, and the costumes here make them rigid. I think, damn, I keep forgetting her name.
Cyril. But I just wanted to say real quick, stand normally. Stand normally, Dana. Stand normally. She's like, well, I am steady. I stand like this. I stand like this. And he's like, no, straight. He's like, you didn't say that. That's like the first of the, we'll talk more about this whole dynamic. That's the first of those, like, Alma getting kind of like snippy back, and the way he like gets like so determined. It's like reminds me of me and my like little sister or something. It's like they're just like fighting for the last word. So there's a few instances of this. There's like a very few instances. And again, I'll talk about this in terms of what I feel like some of the direction in the scenes probably was. But I imagine that was a piece of direction. Was just like each of you is always fighting for the last word, and you do not let each other like ever have the last word. Like the scenes can go on ad infinitum if I don't call cut. You know, that's one of the things I feel like was probably the approach to a lot of these scenes, if not all of them.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I think I see that in the sense that there were a lot of, like, a noticeable amount of dialogueless staring into each other.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's a lot of staring.
That's another direction thing.
Early on, if you get into a staring contest with me, you will lose.
I'll win. Oh yeah, she says you lose.
But that's the first time I think that it's, and the only time that it's mentioned, but there are multiple times throughout the film where those two characters specifically, there is another instance when Cyril and she are staring as well, but where they're just staring at each other. And is it a staring contest? Is it a battle of egos, or is it a request to secede? Is it a searching for vulnerability? I think it depends on the scene. But
okay, so maybe this is a good part to jump in on this point, because this was something I wanted to talk about. And again, it has to do with direction, like what this movie is, and you'll have to tell me to what degree this seemed to be your experience. I'm guessing it is just by things you've said so far, but I won't speak for you. It's like, I find this movie to be like truly, without question, if you watched me watching it last night, you definitely know, one of the most like laugh per minute movies around. So much. Yeah.
I even made a note of like, I think I said actually LOL, which I don't like, because LOL used to mean laugh out loud, but now I literally did.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the moment, or maybe I should say, no, I'll tell you the moment. So my favorite, she goes to the party, right? Mm-hmm. And he's at the table, and you see.
Yep.
And then a couple minutes pass, and you see.
Yep.
So I was already giggling, right? And then a little while longer passes, and they show him from the back, just standing and staring at a closed door, at the door, waiting for her to come in. And that was when I just busted out laughing because he's just standing there waiting for her to come home. And she was like, it was hilarious. It was so funny. It really was like, you know, a middle school fight where it's like, well, I'm not going, so you can't go, you know? And then she goes and he's like, are you really going? Oh, are you really going to go without me? I'm like, she's been gone a long time. She's been gone so long. I'm going to go stand by the door. She'll be home any minute. And then she's not. And it's like, well, damn it. I got to put my pants on.
No, that's such a good read on that. And that is a very good example of several types of things that I'm going to talk about with regards to not why this movie is, quote, a comedy. Because I actually don't necessarily think of it that way, despite what I just said.
There are funny moments for sure.
Well, here's the thing.
I need to plug my phone and we're going to die.
Go ahead.
Damn it,
Dana, please do not fuss. If you fuss, I'll die.
Yeah, anybody who's ever dated me would die because I fuss a lot. DDL would not be able to handle my level of fussing.
No.
I'm like,
I simply cannot begin my day with a confrontation. I don't have time. I don't have time for confrontations. Again, that just takes you right into the character. But before I get into what we were talking about with the whole sort of the humor and like how my sort of thoughts on how this movie was.
Yeah, I did not think I was going to laugh as much as I did, but it's just, the characters are quirky. Like, I don't know if there's another word for it than like quirky or like.
I think that is an appropriate word. But in my analysis for this, I try to avoid thinking of it just in those terms, and I'll explain why in a moment. But I just want to shout this out because this is a really cool thing I got, and I'll tell you about it. This is this book. It's called Paul Thomas Anderson Masterworks. Yeah, by Adam Naiman, who's a great film critic. I definitely respect a lot. It actually has a foreword by the Safdie brothers, which is really cool. I've read that part. But so I got this book months ago when it came out. Like I pre-ordered it. It's incredible. It's got like every PTA film with tons of essays, pictures. It's a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous book. I can't recommend it enough. Except for the fact that I have not read like 90% of it, and this has bothered me because
pictures, Marcus.
No. But see, I have to read this. You don't understand.
Yeah,
like this is my. Okay, let me just be very clear about this. I want to because I need to unload about this whole sort of situation from my point of view. Like, there's a reason we're only talking about Phantom Thread now, and we haven't talked about any Paul Thomas Anderson movie. It's partly because I was like, I need to read this book before I talk about it because there's going to be stuff in this book, presumably, hopefully, that I don't know. And I know a lot of things because I follow the behind the scenes and the interviews of everything ever related to Paul and his films incredibly closely. So I was just like, and good criticism of it as well. So I was like, hopefully there's something new, but either way, it'll be a nice concentration of information for me. And go ahead.
Like it also might be an insight, to this creative process too, a little bit. But that's like almost. I don't want to say because he's allowing it to happen, but that to me feels like borderline invasive. If you know what I mean? Like if not him because he's allowing it, but if I were to write notes or you were to see my notes for things that I write or my characters, I would feel that you're looking into my diary. You know what I mean? Like if you see the notes of the characters I create, it's a lot of deep insight and it's a lot of, at least personally, a lot of maybe embarrassing, not embarrassing, touchy, not touchy subjects. When you're developing characters, you're trying to get to the nitty gritty. And so a lot of the things I write down in my character notebooks, I don't want a soul to ever see those things. Because my scrap. So I feel like a little bit, and in this way, he's allowing it. He wants you to look at his diaries, look at his notes. This is how I got here.
Well, I mean, believe me, I agree with that. I guess to an extent, I've thought about it before with my own stuff. Like, I don't want to see anybody want to see it, but I also think like if I were to die tomorrow or something, that be plenty. I wouldn't have no issue. I mean, I'd be dead, but you know what I mean. I'd have no issue with anyone reading anything I have on my computer, even the embarrassing stuff, just because
that's true for me too. But it would be like, oh well, she's dead. Let's read her diaries.
Well, it's just like it's better that stuff, even the stuff I didn't mean to share. It gives some insight into me. But I just want to say, with regards to that book, as far as I have, because I've only been able to skim through it, which is what I want to explain. I don't think there's. Because I have other similar books about other directors in the work. Like I have this book, The Kubrick Archives, which is another amazing film. And that actually does have his notes in it. It does have things like that in it. This, as far as I've seen, while it's got a lot of behind the scenes photos and some interviews with his collaborators and different things like that, I don't think it includes any of his, like that type of material. And imagine because Paul is very, very, I guess, keeps things close to the vest, literally stitched in the lining, with that type of stuff, typically from what I've gathered over the years. I mean, he likes to be incredibly personable and affable in his interviews, but you'll notice if you follow him in this, because my hope and dream is that if not, not like immediately, sometime, someday, maybe he'd be listening to this. I just want to say, like, I'm in no way suggesting anything wrong with this. In fact, it's something I actually deeply respect and admire about him, is that desire to be affable and kind of very chill and laid back, very Californian, which is a big thing with him. In his interviews and whatnot, when he's doing press.
One of the most hilarious women on the planet.
That's true.
Like you gotta have a lightness about you and some kind of humor to be married to somebody like her.
I would say that.
So much.
I also, that's definitely true for sure. But
you've got to be cool to hang out. She's not going to hang out with you if you're not fucking cool, dude. Like she's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. But I just want to say that all that being said, I think a lot of that in his interviews and a lot of that, I do mean in his interviews, because I think when he's probably like that in other aspects of his life, it's of course as natural and whatever as other people. I think part of why he does that though is it's a very sort of slick way on his part to kind of avoid, if you will. This is why I'm saying, like, hey, I'm with apologies and all absolute reference and respect for you, man. It does feel like to some degree that is his armor. Like that's how he kind of avoids, and he should avoid it, by the way. I'm not even saying that he should avoid it, because part of the genius of his films is that they are a bit impenetrable. That's why I've spent so much of my time and energy penetrating them. Sounds strange. And that's again why I didn't want to just cover any of his films in a light manner. And I'm actually, even though this is gonna
one that I hadn't seen, and one that I think is not. I don't think it did very well. Maybe it got great reviews with critics, but personally, I didn't have any of my friends.
It was not some big commercial or public like pop cultural thing. In the film, like film nerd circles, it was definitely like a big event, as was The Master and as was Inherent Vice. But all three of those films, everything basically post There Will Be Blood, has not really taken off in that kind of way. And I think that's perfectly fine if you're asking me, obviously. But no, I really want to stress this. This is like incredibly important to me. I did not want to cover his films lightly at all, because they do mean so much to me, because I do spend so much fucking time on them and have in the past. Phantom Thread is the one I've spent the least time on, which is again why I think I felt comfortable picking it number one, because I felt like it'll be really what I wanted. I wanted an excuse to fucking, if not read this entire book cover to cover finally, at least read the Phantom Thread chapter. And Dana, I shit you not, I literally didn't have time to read a single page at the end of the day. Because I've been so fucking busy. And so I just want to get that up front. There's probably great juicy nuggets in this book that I will not be able to speak to.
just see what you think by yourself and without that, like your own impressions from the first. I mean, you've seen it multiple times, so
yeah. Fine. But I just don't want to be. Look, I what I'm trying to get across is that I pride myself deeply on a level of expertise when it comes to his films in particular, and I don't want anyone to think actually you don't know what you're talking about because this was said. Didn't you know that? The answer, I guess, in this case would be no, if that's true. I did not know that because I didn't fucking read that. Yeah, but look, this is why I say it. I wanted the excuse just for my own enjoyment. I ultimately didn't have time. It sucks. But I do think after watching the film again last night, I had a ton of great new insights into it that picked up where I left off with it. And one of them is where I wanted to start on this.
Okay.
Which is this question of the humor. Now, I almost now really, this is why I said I wanted to avoid the whole thing about talking about it as just quirk, because I think that when you say that, even though it's accurate, mind you, I think it like people have a lot of sort of built up idea of like quirkiness in films or quirky characters or quirky this. And I don't think that what I imagine a lot of people think with that, even if they themselves can find ways to apply it to this movie, does it justice from the perspective that I find so compelling. Because I feel like this is something, this is Paul's PTA's most recent film. Mm-hmm. And he has one coming out at the end of this year, which is I'm very excited about, of course. We haven't seen anything from it yet, so it's a big mystery. I know a little bit about it, but I don't even know if I want to talk about it yet. Just suffice to say, this is his most recent released film. Mm-hmm. And I really do feel like it's a culmination of a lot of things he's been working on with his recent films, or really all his films. Yeah, because even you go back to Hard 8, and these aspects of this are absolutely there. Which is that he's very interested, seemingly, in the finer details of human behavior that can really, because there's a type of directing that's very sort of observational and voyeuristic in exploring that, and I love that type of filmmaking. This is not that at all. What this is really focused on the dynamics between the people, between the characters, between the actors, because I don't think his films at this point, especially Phantom Thread, is particularly concerned with almost like pulling you out of the moment or being borderline fourth wall breaking. It's not concerned with that. He does not concern himself with that. And I can point to some details of why I say this, but what I really want to focus on with this whole sort of mode is he is willing to allow what I'm talking about because it's how he brings out the nuances of the expression. And so this is what I meant when I was talking about the whole sort of last word back and forth. Because what I really focus on this, and especially this watch, was like, as someone who directs, I was like, how is he doing this? I actually asked myself that question. And once I asked my question, I was able to start to find the answers, and they jumped out at me immediately. Like, or again, these are all just theories because it's not directly taken from anything he said he did. However, on the Blu-ray, they have his camera test reel, which eventually becomes into some outtakes of scenes. And Paul's put on pretty much all his last 3 or 4 films, like going back all the way to Punch Drunk Love with this, what was it called? It was called, Blossoms in Blood. One of the things that he always does with his special features that I fucking love, especially because it helps teach you this type of stuff about the way he works, is he includes like sort of his own personal edits of his outtakes as almost like a separate little short film experience of a kind. It's very unusual. Nobody else does it this way. The one on the Master is like one of the most amazing must-watch things I've ever seen in my life. I've not seen it. I forget what that's called. It's called Back Beyond, of course. Yes. So, and if you remember, I certainly remember, it was like one of the most exciting times of my life, really. the lead up to the release of The Master, he released these teaser trailers. And when I saw the film, everyone was following this closely. Almost like 90% of what was in those teaser trailers is not in the film, was not in the cut of the film.
Awesome.
And since then, I've like read 2 different earlier drafts of the script for that film. And I've seen even more of like some of the deleted scenes and outtakes, even not even just the stuff in Back Beyond. And it's very clear, especially on that film. I think that film might have been a little more unique in this regard. There was just so much he was trying, so much he was doing, so many things he intended that did not make the final edit. And not because they would have been better. I think it's because, or even on the flip side, or even that like he wasn't terribly interested in it. It was just more that like he kind of crafts a film that's like a very particular sort of flow and experience. But the only way you get to that flow is if you kind of really are willing to explore different things and try it different ways. And I imagine on The Master, because of all the different shot stuff he was doing and shooting on 65, it was probably a lot more like controlled things and things from his very big script that was very complicated, had some complicated subplots that did not make it into the movie at all. I don't think there was that at all with Phantom Thread, as far as I know. This is where we're now getting into territory where, for all I know, this book contradicts some of the things I'm going to say, but fuck that. I'm not going to mention it again. Just it's been established. All right. I think almost everything in the script, and that's the thing. I have not read the Phantom Thread original screenplay, but I'm guessing a lot of stuff that's in the script is in this film. It's not like he went some other direction with it, but he made this film very consciously with the intention and even the way it developed, because he was working on the script by like passing notes back and forth between him and DanielDay-Lewis all the way through. So he didn't like write this script for 2 years and then come back and give the draft to DanielDay-Lewis. He basically told him an elevator pitch of what it would be and kind of let their back and forth dictate how he was developing it from the start, which I don't think he had ever really done before. So it was a very sort of collaborative process, even just at a scripting level, in a way that was different than his other films.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
No idea.
But I still think even then, when you talk about whatever the final script that I have not read or drafts of it that I've not read turned out to be, I think the intention was when they came down to shoot the scenes, and I think it had a lot to do with even the way they casted the film and different things. He really wanted to make every scene like you're just there. The actors are there. They're playing the characters. They are the characters. We all know about how committed DanielDay-Lewis is to being this character, so you don't even worry about that. But that's why I think what Paul's genius is, he's going to just let DanielDay-Lewis kind of like almost like showboat enough that he even kind of does break character, or breaking character. This is a better way to put it, especially with respect to DanielDay-Lewis. I think he found a way that, quote, breaking character is a meaningless statement. It's like the point. Every single scene is directed, and this is where I think how you get all that humor that we respond to, is that every single scene is like these 2 people or 3 people, if it's Cyril included, are in the room, and there's like a very specific set of beats and things. It's almost like directing Curb Your Enthusiasm a little bit. And there's like a very specific, like,
very timed.
This is what you're trying to do. This is what you're trying to do. And I'm not going to say cut. You're just going to keep going, and whoever gets the last word gets the last word. And so I think it encourages this very sort of like playful and like competitive way of performing with the other actors. And
well, I think if you've ever done an improv class, or if you've studied, I think this is part of Stella Adler's technique. But one of the things that you should always be thinking, because as humans, you realize it or not, there's always something you want.
Right.
At any moment, in any situation, there is a thing that you want to benefit you to happen. Yeah. Right? So as these characters, DanielDay-Lewis, he's thinking, what do I want to happen? And then you add the layers of your character on top of that. But the deep down of my want, the wanting and the need for your character in that situation should always be there. So if P.T. Anderson's telling them, hey guys, you got this baseline of a goal. Your character wants this, right? Your character wants this, right? Improv, and how are you going to get it? Go.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love to be on a set.
No,
like
I'm
that.
glad you brought up what you just brought up. And I've avoided using the term improv because I wanted to explain
I know, it's not really. It's like guided. It's guided.
Yeah. I think it's good that you say it because I think to some degree it absolutely does apply. But I wanted to kind of like put it out there. You let you or anyone apply it, but then just to say like, I think that, and I don't think P.T. Anderson has any problem with it being seen as improv or anyone really for that matter, including DanielDay-Lewis. But I think it kind of can leave the wrong impression because I think if you just leave it as, oh, there's improv in this movie, it's kind of more like this experiment in realism and character immersion, which is again very much DanielDay-Lewis's whole thing. And I think Paul probably got this sort of impact, this sort of approach to directing from working with him. Not necessarily there was DanielDay-Lewis pushing for it, because I don't think he's like that at all as an actor. But like when you work with him, it kind of, at least if you're him, it draws out in you an interest, because you can see him then imported into a film like The Master when he's working with Joaquin and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And again, I think he's always had this in his films. You can go back to look at Boogie Nights, you can go back to look at Heart 8. The aspects of this approach are 100% there. But I think it's a much more refined thing now, where, and when I say refined, I mean like much looser in the actual result. Is he's kind of like, the scene is so delicately constructed and written, and every single aspect of the psychology is so developed. I mean, that's kind of like his films keep getting deeper and deeper in some ways. I don't think his film's as deep as The Master or anything, but it's like, it's as deep in a certain sense.
This one ended up in a strange psychological place for me as well.
Yes.
Like getting to that point where you're, spoiler alert, I mean, no big deal, but when you were okay with being poisoned.
Yeah, by the way, I forgot to say at the top, because I want to dedicate this show for all the hungry boys out there. This is our moment. No, like, and I say that because I didn't think I consciously thought this last week, but I think subconsciously I did. And I'm gonna explain this whole theory, but I want to get back to what I was saying before first. But I'll just preview it to say the fact that we talked about Crash last week and now we're talking about this is not an accident.
Yeah,
I think there actually is a very distinctive parallel between these films. That's certainly interesting. But yes, to your point, yes, no, I believe me, we're gonna get into that depth, and I think it's absolutely there, which is more or less my point. I'm just saying it's not as complicated as The Master or probably There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, or Inherent Vice in some senses, but it's certainly not dropping the ball in those areas, not even a little bit. And I think that, again, where that comes from is you have this very, 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 very just incredibly precise and astute voice behind the whole thing, working with actors that he obviously picks up on, have a similar affinity to getting those nuances and details right. I think that's what he's looking at when he's casting. He's like, if I'm working with Daniel Day, even if my goal is almost to cast actors you're not familiar with in the roles of Cyril and Alma, I'm going to find the ones that have this insight. Not, which isn't to say that they intellectualize anything, but just to say that like you can feel that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up these scenes with this beautiful script I've written, and I'm going to have them play that. But then it's going to keep going. And it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep going. And I'm not saying that like this is like a Fincher thing where there's like 50 takes, because I actually imagine.
No, but I think that also gives us a little insight as to some of those long pauses that we saw throughout the film.
That's why. That's what I was gonna. That when you brought that up, I was.
Yeah.
So right. So now that's a good pivot into like the more very precise directing things. I think the reason you get that is, again, exactly what I just said. I think he just will put the camera on, either not say action or not say cut, and just have the actors hold the moment, and just like he's just observing it, and just then when he edits, and this is the other thing, because editing is key to this approach. This approach does not work without the right approach to editing. It's just like they require one another. The editing is what sells this, because he's not cutting out all that shit. He's leaving it in. In fact, he's making that the scene. Again, without having read the script, I am certain there were scenes where he basically cut out all this motivation and action and dialogue, and just left the weird odd ends of like Day walking into a room and being like, what's going on? Or just like Alma just sitting there like, why is the camera still rolling? Like, but the point is she's not actually thinking that, because she's so in it. She's actually in that room with Reynolds. Like, and this is what I mean about the sort of idea of breaking the fourth wall becomes a non-thing, is because with this emphasis on really kind of holding and finding those in-between moments and kind of just letting things play out, making sure the actors know that they can't let the other, at least in the scenes where they're being confrontational, that they're not letting the other one have the last word. It kind of forces you to kind of like a little bit step even outside. Like you have to on some level become a little self-aware that you're entertaining. Now, if the vibe on the set was, this is a very dour scene or very dour anything, it would not work like that. But I think that's another thing that he doesn't do. When PTA directs, it's like, especially with DanielDay, who obviously people think is like this super dramatic guy and all this stuff. He's like, no, it's very chill. Reynolds is like this charming guy. I want Reynolds to talk, like I want Reynolds to be a one-liner, one-up machine. And DanielDay knows that because they've talked about it a million times. They've talked about it with him still in character as Reynolds. And he's just like, so when he comes into a scene, he's like, I'm Reynolds, the movie star. I'm Reynolds, the guy on the camera. And I'm going to like show who's boss on this set. Alma, meanwhile, is this plucky upstart who thinks she can get the last word over me. Fuck you. Hell no. And now I'm just like letting that rock. So like, again, that one of the first scenes where you see it, I could feel it. This is in the camera test, I believe. So you can see a little bit the outtake of the actual outtakes of it. And you can just tell like PTA's cracking up at everything they're doing. So it's like, they know it's funny because the director's laughing. So now when they're rolling camera, they kind of know, oh, a good take is one where we make him laugh. But like, they're not trying to tell jokes. They're not trying to do anything. But there's a self-awareness of that you could say is breaking the fourth wall. But the point is, it's irrelevant because by doing this, by having this approach, what happens is you get so many more of these finer details of the characters and the performances. Like you start to understand. And I think PTA also has the ability to, as they're shooting this, like kind of be reactive to the directions that's been going on the previous days with that. Like I imagine there were scenarios where he was like, feel like Alma's getting away with it too much.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell Daniel off camera, or Reynolds, because he never goes by his real name when he's working. So I'm going to tell Reynolds, you're going to come in and you're going to know some shit she doesn't know about yet. And you're just going to make fun of her dress. And I told Leslie, who plays Cyril, I told her, like, you know, you're just going to make fun of her dress and you two are going to agree. And she's going to be like looking around confused because the scene was supposed to be about how you were going to compliment her. And you're just like, and I'm speculating. I don't know if that's what happened, but I guarantee you it did.
I bet that would get such a good reaction from Alma, because she would be so confused as the character and as herself. What? Mm-hmm. 100%.
Exactly. So little games like that. Everything's a game is kind of what I'm getting at. When I first saw the film, it was at a screening ahead of like a guild screening or something. producer screening.
In New York?
Head of no, in LA. There was ones in New York, but I went to the one in LA. And you know, I was just like, I've seen The Master, I've seen Inherent Vice. I'm already very tipped off. I mean, I've seen Punch Drunk Love. I've seen all his films. I'm already tipped off to the fact that, dude, like PGA is trying to make you laugh. You don't need to overthink it. He's trying to make you laugh. Like, don't.
In his way, which is a non-conventional American comedic way.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. I 100% think that he's trying to make you laugh a few times, but he's also trying to make you, I don't want to say feel sorry for, but maybe identify with a lot of some of the other things that the characters
that is why you do laugh. You laugh because it feels familiar. And that's exactly what I mean about the advantages of this approach, where you're almost borderline breaking the fourth wall, is because everything becomes so much more human when you do that, and it becomes so much more recognizable because people aren't putting on the airs of performance anymore, even though they're being incredibly performative. These sort of inherent contradictions are kind of the point. But I bring that up to say I'm in this screening and I'm literally cackling like a motherfucker at almost every line. And basically nobody else is. And I'm laughing even harder because of that. Because I'm like, you fucking amateurs don't even understand the movie. You fucking fools. Funny. And these are industry professionals. And I noticed as the film went on, they started to laugh more.
Like maybe they did get it and they're like, I'm too cool to laugh.
No, it's more, I don't think anyone thought they were too cool to laugh. I think everyone thought, like, because there's this very reverence to it, and it's DanielDay-Lewis, and you think it's supposed to be this incredibly serious film. And mind you, this is why I say it's not a comedy. The film's actual story and construction is a very deep and meant to be sad in some ways. Insight into human emotion. But what Paul is a master at is kind of like taking that and saying that is going to be so, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't thoroughly enjoy the experience. And that doesn't mean you, and also this is another thing we're going to talk about more in depth in a moment. I mean, I'm a big believer, and you can tell by the directors I like, or just even the stuff I work on. I'm a big believer in what I, you know, this is more, I guess this is a GJX thing, but like the sort of perverts, if you will, perspective on cinema. And Paul's whole thing with this movie is like, you knowing me, because if you've seen The Master and Inherent Vice and There Will Be Blood, like you should know, and Punch Drunk Love, you should know that that's what I'm interested in. Duh. Yeah. But he very slowly unfurls that the movie is just another exercise in that. He does not start you there. But again, that in and of itself is one big joke. I still don't consider it a comedy, but I'm ultimately saying this distinction of whether it's a comedy or not is completely superfluous as far as I'm concerned. It's like a no question. Who cares? But I think the point is you should feel encouraged to laugh. And I noticed that that's the audience that was being very resistant to laughing while I was cackling right from the beginning, literally from like the first scene. Like
the nose hairs made you laugh.
They started to loosen up. Now, one moment
made me smile. I'm like, why are we looking at the nose hairs? That's a bit much.
I'll tell you you know what the funniest moment in the movie is, and this proves to me it goes even well beyond that some of that sort of like pseudo improv stuff we were talking about. Though this does have to do with editing and music cues. The funniest moment, I actually didn't laugh though when I watched at this scene last night, and I think it's just because it's been so built up to me. I've done it so many times that like I'm just a little bit out of it in that moment this time. But when I first saw it in the movie, and probably second and third time as well, and I just don't remember if other people because like I said, as the movie went on, more people started getting comfortable with laughing. I don't remember if anyone else was really laughing at this, but I laughed so loud it sounded like the whole theater laughed. The cut from the scene where Daniel Day is complaining to Cyril, and he's basically like Alma and I are done. She's gone. And most dramatic variation of the Phantom theme drops right as it cuts to Alma just walking in this like this grayed out woods. It's like the most like it's like if you just look at that shot on the surface or the music, it's like the most like big operatic like Mozart adagio like moody gloomy Edgar Allan Poe looking scene. But the way that's cut, and obviously if you've been paying attention, you immediately know the implication of what's about to happen.
Yes.
It's hilarious. It's like the funniest thing in the world. It's just like
because he says. Oh, I laughed at that. But he also says, "Well, you two went to the school of like rudeness or something like that."
Yes. It's like, aren't you a polite pair? Aren't you? Or no, you think it's like, aren't you two a model for politeness or whatever? That's the line right before that.
Yeah, because she was rude for not stopping him, and she was rude for not announcing her presence, but she wanted her to hear the truth. It was necessary.
Oh yeah.
She wanted her to hear. And so I think that's why Cyril kind of smirks. And she's like,
Yeah. No. So you're coming off
because it hurts my ears. I don't want to hear you moaning. So I didn't tell you, so I didn't want to hear you moaning.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're coming off of a scene that's very funny. Other people definitely were laughing at that scene, like where he's like obviously one of the best lines. He's like, chic, what the fuck is that little fucking word? I hate chic. I don't even know what it means. What the fuck is chic? Whoever said chic should be hung, drawn, and quartered. So people were laughing at all that. And I think at that point, people were getting more in the mood that there's like a sort of comedic bent to the film. But then you get to that, it's the big Baroque. Dun, 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 dun. It's just walking with what's, and you just know what's going to happen. Yeah. Granted, I did not know what was going to happen after what was going to happen at all, which is another brilliant, obvious thing.
Yeah.
But though I should have seen it coming, I guess in a sort of subconscious way I did, which is why I found this cut that I'm talking about so fucking funny, is because it's just like, he's getting a little too little. He thinks he's going to get rid of me. Well, I'm going to poison you again.
Again. But I think he's aware of it, right?
Well, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We need to say that for when we're ready to kind of just go into the whole ending in general.
I just want to really quick.
Go ahead.
Cyril, say that I thought that you get the indication of their relationship early on because she lets Joanna go because she's getting fat and waiting for him to fall in love with her again.
Right.
So their relationship is already kind of incestuous in that way. Like she's doing his dirty work on a personal level. She's breaking up with his girlfriends for him.
Yeah, Cyril.
And I think that dynamic is immediately clear when
it's immediately made clear from almost all the scenes in the first 15 minutes that him and Cyril's relationship is super weird and super unconventional. Like she's basically his mother and his wife when she's actually his sister and his assistant and his boss in some ways.
And kind of his boss because she tells him, she's like, you come at me and I'll have you flat on your back. And she doesn't even, no response. I'll have you flat on your back. Don't even question it.
Well, she's also the person who manages all the money.
And knows where the bodies are buried. She knows everything.
Well, yeah. I mean, one thing.
You can't trust her.
I want to point this out because even though I was very aware of this, because it's like part of the plot of the film, it's part of the plot several times over, actually. But it's, again, the plot, certain aspects of the plot and subtext, I mean, because it's subtext, are very understated. And you can kind of get lost from this. But these people are like some of the most important people in the world, Reynolds and Cyril. Like they literally work directly for heads of state, for princesses and queens. Yeah. And like it's like, you know, it's kind of like these people are like about as like powerful as you can be while being a private civilian that's not one of those people. And, you know, obviously there's a very particular kind of class hierarchy with this stuff, and they're not of, and that's another reason why Alma's weird jealousy towards the princess is very sort of like bizarre. Though there's a thread. There's a thread there that's another very understated subtextual thing about Alma's background as an immigrant, and that has a lot to do with her behavior. Yeah, the boobs. Well, the boobs too. That boob, but you're right. The boobs. She's like, she got all this flat-chested bullshit, even though she's really not that flat-chested.
And he's like, "Well, that's perfect. You're great for that." And then he's just looking.
She's like looking at her, just with the slightly fuller cups, and she's like.
He makes her the ugliest dress I have ever seen, with the pointed and then the scooped. Like, I hated that wedding dress.
Yeah, I didn't like it either. I would not
want a princess to wear it, and he even says it himself, and I'm like, thank God he said that, because if they were about to say that this was a good dress for a princess to get married in, I was going to lose my shit. But that was an interesting moment for me, is that he's feeling so ill, and then he finally admits a peck of truth about his own work, that this one is not very good, is it? And then he proceeds to ruin it by falling over on it. He gets scuff marks, he rips the lace, he tears the bottom of the dress. Like, it's a mess now. So I think that if he had his druthers, he would never had allowed that dress to go out to the princess who he made her christening gown, first communion, et cetera, dresses for. He admitted it wasn't a good dress, but he had to fix it, and they had to send it because he was ill and there was no time. They had to send it by 9 a.m. They had to work all night to fix the terrible dress.
So here's a thing. That's all true, but something that just kind of came to me even more directly when you just were explaining that, and it ties into another sequence, the whole Barbara Rose episode. I mean, that ties into a lot of the other little things I was just alluding to that I don't even know if I necessarily want to get into about, Alma's background and the certain particular history in England at the time. But what I really want to point out, because to me it's so obvious that Barbara Rose, and to some extent, is a stand-in for this, and it ties into like really another key fundamental, I think, to understanding this movie. And this is something I know not only because Paul did kind of give it away in some interviews, and the intro to that book I showed you, I did read, and he talks about it there. There's a very deep personal bent to this film and where the inspiration for this movie came from. Now, aspects of that I won't talk about just yet, but one of the indirect implications to me is that this film and Reynolds' character is absolutely a stand-in for directing and being a director. And that whole, there's stuff with a certain kind of cycle we're going to get into the cycle and how that works. But it's very deep to Paul's heart, seemingly, from what he's said and what I can surmise. But one particular aspect that's less to do with the cycle, but just more to do with like a certain type of dynamic that once you accept them, that this can be a metaphor for filmmaking, becomes very clear, which is that Barbara Rose character, who's like the drunk old lady who's getting remarried. It's like he's been working with this woman for a long time, and now she's wearing his dress and like mangling it and all this stuff. And that's one of the great moments where Alma gets to stick up for him and be like, "You do not disrespect the House of Woodcock," and like knock on the doors, give me the dress. It's like, get the fucking dress. Like she's sleeping in it.
But I think so. This is the first moment that he knows he truly has someone who maybe understands him for the first time in Alma.
Yes,
because
that's true.
He's just sitting there seething at dinner, seething in his chair. There's no better word, right?
Oh yeah.
At her wiping her face on his creation, he's seething.
Yeah.
And I don't think he would have gotten up, made her give the dress back, and done one damn thing if Alma didn't say, "Look how she's disrespecting the House of Woodcock. You can't let her do that. She doesn't deserve to wear this dress." And then Alma starts crying. And he says, don't cry. Are you crying? Like what? Are you crying because a woman that you don't really know, my client, is ruining a dress that I made for her. It's upsetting you this much. And I think that's the moment when he's like, okay, she gets me and she gets what my art means to me. And I'm mad too. Mm-hmm. She's mad and I'm mad too. And I want that damn dress back.
So no, this is really, really on point. Cause like, you're right. This absolutely has a lot to do with like him starting to really like, not cause he's already accepted Alma at the point. They've already even had some back and forth of like up and down at that point. But it is one of the highlights of him reminding himself. And that's why he kisses her on the street of this woman is special. And we there is something that could be my way out with her. And I think it does have to do with the metaphor I was just about to get into more. Or maybe
he realizes that she cares about his work. Yeah.
Right. So she cares about his work. This is very important.
She's worthy of the legacy. She's worthy of the legacy of the House of Woodcock because she cares enough to cry. She cares enough to get it. She's maybe worthy of the legacy, possibly worthy of being a girlfriend, like a more permanent staple in his life because she cares.
She cares enough to cry.
Maybe more than anyone except him, and maybe even more than Cecil.
She cares enough to cry, and it's very important. Like, cause look, I definitely relate to this very personally. Like, the idea of like anyone, because you always feel very isolated and alone by this, might care about your work in a way that feels like how you care about your work and understands and respects that you care so much about your work. I mean, that's an incredibly, I cannot stress this enough. That's an incredibly moving thing. That's an incredibly moving thing. Mm-hmm. It's like you look for it and you don't ever expect to see it and find it. That's what I mean about what's so isolating about it. You're just so used to everybody being very flippant, even people who are being quote respectful or people that like will even give you praise and compliments or whatever. You just get the feeling that when it comes down to it, it's like they either don't really get it, and this is separate from the question of getting it, but they don't hold it the way like I do. They don't understand that like it actually is that important to me. I'm not just being dramatic here. You could say I am to some extent, and it's not untrue or unfair, because at the end of the day, life is more. But it is something that's deeply, deeply, deeply important to you, and like you want to feel respected. I mean, this trickles into some of this Reynolds' other like sort of obsessions and quirks, which again is not to make any excuses for them so much as to say that like, you want to feel seen. Ultimately, what Reynolds is for as much as like he forces himself to be seen by making a big deal out of everything, by being an asshole, by doing all these things. He doesn't want people to just respond to that and then do what he wants. He wants someone to actually really recognize it and treat it delicately because they care for either him or honestly, he cares less if they care for him and more that they genuinely care for the work or whatever it is itself. Yeah. So again, that to me, I'm coming in from like this writer director point of view. I imagine that's how Paul sees it. I imagine that's how Daniel sees it as the point of view of an actor who's been in so many films and given so much. But the whole, to me, metaphor with the Barbara Rose thing is just like, this is that financier, which she is, because like Cyril even says, like, Barbara Rose pays for this house.
She bought this house, yeah.
Yeah, but she pays for this house. Like, she keeps the lights on is another way to say what she's saying there. And so he has to put up with her. And this is like and if you know some of the background with Paul's earlier work, I mean, he had this experience on Hard 8, which he still like 30 years later does not let go of, apparently, where it's like, they took my movie from me and it's like this horrible thing. So I feel like that's still so raw in his mind that when he was writing this stuff, he's just like, look at these executives like shitting all over my fucking genius and like rubbing their face in it. And I think when the character of Barbara Rose is so important to understand because it obviously ties into some of the other subtext, so I don't want to not mention it, but I think it's reflective of this.
Were you going to say she represents commercialism? Because that's what I was thinking.
Well, under that context,
that true artists, you kind of have to do it.
Well,
you got to get paid. You got to eat.
No. See, I think someone like I reject that part of it, because at least from the perspective of what I imagine the film saying and the way Reynolds himself is as a character, I can't speak for Paul, but I would imagine it's not too similar, especially given this whole story. If someone was like really going to, he actually said this, I think directly once, so I can't quote him on this, is if someone was ever trying to put him through that experience again, he would just stop. He would not do it. He would not do it. He would just go quietly, and that would be the end of it. Mm-hmm. That's how much of an impression it left on him. And that was also not a situation where it was like, oh, I'll just accept it. No, he was like kicking and screaming, and it just didn't matter. So it, you know, the thing I'm saying with the Barbara Rose thing that's important to keep in mind, because it does tie into these other subtexts that are very there, and so it's not a contradiction, is Barbara Rose, despite how much he's abusing this dress, I think the film does have genuine empathy for her and her alcoholism and the fact that she's marrying this guy who, there's definitely a bad racial overtone to it, but the press is assuming is a gold digger, even though he himself is a wealthy man, and etc. There's a lot they show you all that too, I think, hopefully provoke.
Well, just the fact that she feels the need to defend herself. They leave that news conference with her yelling. She's just yelling. What was it?
Who's yelling? Who's yelling? I don't know what you're talking about.
She was in the dress when she's with the boy toy who she's about to marry and her son.
I don't remember her yelling.
Yeah, well, she gets very emotional then. It's they say, what do you bring to the relationship? And she said...
She's sincerity. She's just kind of being drunk and like weird.
The camera, I specifically remember the camera pulling back and her doing this, what I'm doing, scooching. And
yes.
And saying, sincerity is...
Well, yes, she does do the scooching, lean forward thing you're talking about.
But yelling, but it was a lot more emotion than she had been exuding the rest of the initial part of the interview, and it was clearly a break of emotion for her.
I think she was getting a little bit frustrated with the fact that people weren't like accepting her answer. But I just want to say, look, they give her that.
Why should she have to tell people? Just the fact that she feels the need, or that the press felt the need for this character to explain a marriage and what she brings to it. Like that in itself is traumatizing. Can you imagine if you have a girlfriend and somebody's like, hey, come sit down and let me ask you, what do you bring to this relationship? It's nobody's business. It was ridiculous to me. And so I definitely felt for her in the sense that if you were in the public eye, not that I know, but if you were in the public eye, the need to like allow people access to the reasonings of your relationships is so invasive. And she's already a woman who's clearly insecure about herself, and to feel the need to go defend her relationship then on camera by people, or for them, or to agree to it in general, made me feel very sad for her character. It made me realize the loneliness that her character must be feeling. And
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's all there for you to be able to have the reaction you're talking about. So 100%. So you are supposed to feel sympathetic towards her, which then, begs the question, given what I was just reading into it about it being a metaphor, or can be read as a metaphor for a sort of financier who's abusing a creative work by like a director or whatever. I think that the sort of conflict between those two things, because I think they are both true, is interesting, and I think speaks to something else, which is, I think, from, if I can attribute it to PTA, I think from his perspective, it's like, even in context where this person might be very sympathetic, right? Because there aren't easy villains. All these people are human beings. Still, you can't fuck up my dress. like I know, but you can't fuck up my dress. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I just can't let you. I can't let you. I cannot let you fuck up my dress. So
I love that Alma went to go take it off of her because they're like, well, we're just here to pick it up. Just give it to us. And we're like, well, she's sleeping in it. Like, oh that's the ultimate. You can't sleep in a chiffon gown. That's not how this works. I can barely sit in this dress, and this is not a nice
You're doing a good job, though. You're doing a good job. You're doing a fantastic job. Reynolds and everyone would be quite pleased with it. Yes, incredible. Very, very, very elegant.
This is the most like Reynolds-esque dress that
It very much reminds me of the dress Alma wears in the dinner scene with the surprise dinner scene.
Similar, actually. Yeah. That one has a little bit more of a puffed sleeve. This is supposed to be off the shoulder, but I tend to like prop it up a little bit more. Man, I just feel like I'm very grateful for his choice of casting. I'm just going to say that. No,
let's talk about that.
I was very grateful to see two unknowns to me. I mean, they have done many, many works in Europe, but they're not.
So Vicky Krieps, who plays Alma, she's not an unknown. She had been in a few little things, but she was a lot more. Unknown is not an unfair label for her to some extent. Lesli Manville, who plays Cyril, she's been in a lot of things, I think, but again, like not someone that people would particularly notice or pay attention to.
I think that was such a good choice because can you imagine if it's I don't know, Dame Judi Dench in that role or somebody like that?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh no, it's very different.
She would knock it out of the park, but that takes away from Reynolds in a way. And it draws more attention to, it breaks the third wall a little bit more because we know her so well. We know her name. We know her face so well. It's already our job to get past the fact that it's the purpose and see Reynolds, but can we do the same with multiple people? It's not as easy.
It's not as easy, but there's a couple little interesting tidbits about this. And one I actually did just even glancing at the book that I was talking about, I noticed that it said this, and this is a good because I knew about the film's parallels and connections to this film that I'm about to talk about. But have you ever seen Hitchcock's Rebecca?
No. Didn't they just remake it?
They did. They did with Armie Hammer.
Oh God.
So I was gonna try to avoid mentioning that part, but yes, they did just remake it. Presumably the remake, regardless of that stuff, is not good anyway.
Would they reshoot? It's too much to reshoot. He's the lead. They just released.
Oh, they already released it, I believe. Oh, so it was before. I thought
it was upcoming.
No, they released it like late last year at some point.
Oh wow! But, I'm way behind the curve. I literally thought it was.
Well, forget that remake. Watch the original if you watch anything.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I was just gonna say, Rebecca, and I'll talk about more of the reasons why in a little bit. Is a big inspiration. I mean, PTA himself has cited it multiple times, so it's not ambiguous on this. But if you've seen it, you can draw the connections pretty quickly. But one of them that I hadn't really thought about. So this is a Laurence Olivier film, by the way, and obviously, DanielDay, Laurence Olivier, people kind of put them in a similar category, fairly or unfairly.
They are of the same caliber, at least.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they certainly have like this sort of similar sort of reputation to them.
They're character actors that are top tier, for sure.
I mean, Joan Fontaine's in the film, but there's a sort of parallel in the sense that like Laurence Olivier is kind of like this larger than life kind of actor that unless you go out of your way to cast another larger than life actor is going to feel like this. And it's interesting to just kind of not only not do that, but just be like, go in the opposite direction. I want you to be experiencing actors that you're unfamiliar with. And going into this film, I don't think anyone knew, not even really me, just how much of the film was from Alma's point of view. And it's basically Alma's film. Alma's the protagonist, not Reynolds.
Yeah, she's the one telling the story by the campfire too.
Yeah, she's the narrator, but I think even more like because she could be the narrator and not the protagonist, but she's the narrator and the protagonist of the film. So it's really her point of view story. Obviously, you see scenes that she's not present in and scenes that she wouldn't necessarily know about. But that's just a kind of sort of convention. It's not really. It doesn't take away from the film's strict point of view, kind of, for the most part. And yeah, the whole narration and structure, we'll talk about that in a little bit too. But I just want to say that, you know, that in terms of that Rebecca's parallel with the casting and stuff, it really kind of lets, and this is why I think that fourth wall kind of like erasure that I'm talking about is even more of like a powerful tool. I think this is maybe why, beyond just like mirroring Rebecca in some way, PTA might have done this, is that when it's one thing to see DanielDay-Lewis cut a little loose, and I think that just in and of itself is so compelling, and just see him be just like witty with his little like insults and jabs and quirks, and as you said,
see him like spry on his feet with the quick-wittedness.
Yeah. See all that. But it makes it when someone does it back to him and you don't even know them, even more like impressive to you. So I feel like it's this very deliberate thing where he casts these incredibly impressive actors and basically be like, you're going to look impressive because you're going to be scoring points on LeBron. Like if you start scoring points on LeBron, people are going to think you're some insane prodigy. They're going to be like, you're the new Linsanity. You're going to like, you're just out. Yeah. And that's the impact that I think it had. And, you know, now like I would never go in a film that has either Lesli Manville or Vicky Krieps in it and not be like expecting fireworks of some kind. Like, yeah, you know, maybe they'll be in a small part, but like, cause they're not really being cast in leads as anything, but it's like, you just know that, they score on LeBron. Like they can fucking handle anything. So, you know, I think that is an impressive feat and a very deliberate choice. And I think when it comes to Vicky, who plays Alma, there's even more to it than that, of course, because so much of Paul's approach, and this is actually a good way to talk about this, is just how things look, man. He's a visual artist, and he's making a film about a fashion designer. So, you know, shouts to Mark Bridges, who was the costume designer on this, won the Academy Award very rightfully. I don't know if you remember this moment. This was such a great Academy Awards for him because not only did he win, but there was something where Helen Mirren was like, ride off in a jet ski. It was some bizarre thing. And he was the guy who volunteered to do it it was a reward for having the shortest speech. So when he won, he was just like, thank you, Paul, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And then just walked away. And then she was like, you won. And like, he like was like on a jet ski, like, ah. It was so fucking funny. This was the big 90th Academy Awards last one that had a host with Jimmy Kimmel.
I probably would have practiced that like really fast talking radio salesman voice. We're like, thank you for coming. I just want to thank my mom and Emma.
Oh yeah. He was not far off from that. But that was. He even said it. He basically even said it was like, I heard I get a reward for making the short speech, so I'm just gonna say blah blah blah, and then moved on. But it was great. And so Mark Bridges is one of the not counting producers, I think he's like the only person that's worked with PTA on, and if not, he's one of the very few, even though PTA is very loyal with his collaborators, every movie, all the way to Heart 8, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, fucking Punch Drunk Love, There Will Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, and Phantom Thread.
When you find your team, you find your team. You know,
what I think is so impressive about this,
it seems like it would just make work so much more efficient because you don't have to learn about a new person and how they operate and tell them how you like things. This guy already knows.
100%, and 100%. And obviously, given that he's worked in all these other movies, he's worked with them on even the same period because The Master is set basically around the same time frame.
Is The Master mid-50s too? It is.
Yeah. So yeah, same time period, and there's similarities, but obviously there's also very differences because this is This is in the world of high fashion. This is in London, though. Again, there was actually a much larger London section of the master that was trimmed down.
I thought this was London for some reason.
What? No, it's London. It's London.
I thought the House of Woodcock was in London.
It is. It's London. No, I said it is London. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you said that wasn't. I got confused.
No. Is. I'm saying in the master, there's a section of the master. The final act of the master takes place in England, but that was much longer in earlier versions of the film than it ended up being. So I'm just saying he's even worked in that specific, nationality, and the interest in England and London in particular is something I want to talk about because obviously PTA is very associated with California for obvious reasons, but he seems to be a bit of an Anglophile, if from what I can tell, because he obviously made this film. Even you could tell like the decision to put the London stuff that's in the master in there was very like inspired to interest. His collaborator from the music, this is another key collaborator who's worked on his last 4 films, is Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead, who's his composer. And I remember him telling a story about even coming up with There Will Be Blood, and he got the book Oil, Upton Sinclair book, at a bookshop in London. So he was already there. So he spends a lot of time over there is what I'm saying. So I think this is coming from a deep sort of connection or familiarity to it. And it's interesting, obviously, that, when you look at like a film like Rebecca, like, Hitchcock himself is a Brit. So it's different. Whereas this PTA is an avowed Californian, a very California dude, but he has this sort of deep interest and knowledge. Because it feels sincere. Like if I didn't know, I would absolutely assume this was made by a British filmmaker because it's very astute to all that. I would think
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Culturally, I think
it's very grounded in that world. And I mean DanielDay-Lewis is Irish, but he, he's a Londoner too. And he very much, or at least was at one point. I don't know where I feel like he lives off the grid. but
honestly, I would not be surprised if he lived in that house from the Battle of Jack and Rose, just without Rose.
I don't know, but you might be right. He
lives in the middle of nowhere, no washing.
Well, he was like a cobbler in the middle of nowhere, as the
he used to make shoes, right?
Yeah. So who the fuck knows what he does with him and his wife or whatever? But he obviously has a sense of not only like the British sensibility, but like the British like sort of like artsy, fashiony, theatery sensibility in particular. So I imagine just being friends with him kind of draws that out in you. But so Mark, Mark Bridges deserves a lot of credit, and obviously had imagine being told like, oh, you have to make a film about fashion design. So not only do you have to design these dresses, they have to be dresses that look like they're by this legendary designer who actually designs for royalty and is like one of the most respected people in the world in this field. So, that's no pressure, as they say.
No pressure. You'll get it.
No pressure.
I'm very curious, and I would love to find out because I know that he took at least some sewing classes. But I'm curious as to how much like patterning DanielDay-Lewis got into.
A lot.
It is such an art. Like
he basically apprenticed with a designer and tailors, and for almost a year while they were. Oh
my god! So he can make this dress, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I knew he would have done something to that extent, but the pattern thing. I've never seen a process more complicated than doing a 3D puzzle for a moving part that has to, it's just so complicated. For instance, I actually was going to wear a different outfit today. It's a pink little Jackie Onassis inspired outfit that my great aunt made in the 1980s for herself. It has 122 pattern pieces. So you have to do all of this 3D, and then if there's something with your client, like, oh, this person has one leg bigger than the other, or like blah, 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 which is normal, then you have to alter your puzzle. It's just so complicated. I have a bodice in the corner of my room and I pinned a tube top on it. And that took me forever. It is so difficult because you need it to be precise. I'm going to put a zipper in it. I'm going to put a zipper in it, right? So it needs to match up. Otherwise, you're going to end up with that as your shirt. You know, you don't. It's such an art, and I knew that as an actor with a cobbler background, he already has a leg up because you're already working. You're already and difficult material.
The film was created.
You're already using sewing machines. You already know how to pattern because shoes are very difficult. Sometimes when you do the wingtip, especially, it's very intricate. It takes a lot of work and a lot of skill, and you have to know how to use a leather sewing machine as well. Which my great grandfather was a cobbler in Mexico, so there is a leather sewing machine at my grandmother's house someplace, like a vintage one. But that it's sort of like a precursor and sort of like having the the 101 version, not the 101 version, but like an alternate version of sewing. So I thought for him this was a natural progression. Well, I already know how to make shoes, so I may as well do the classes, do a year of classes to play this character, and now he can dress you from head to toe.
No,
I'm not even kidding. 100%. If Daniel-Day-Lewis had a clothing line or a shoe line, I buy all of that shit.
He might, he might. I don't know at this point. He might actually.
I think he's got to make out a pair of himself.
Google that and look it up. Yeah, but look, I just I of course, and I agree. And a part of the genesis of this film was just Paul becoming very interested in reading about the designers of the time and being fascinated by it and being like, Daniel should play one of these guys or a guy I create that's based on them, inspired by them. So that's one of the things they started trading notes back and forth about that kind of led throughout the process of writing the film and creating that character of Reynolds Woodcock. Now, I want to talk because we mentioned the editing, and I was saying how this is so crucial with regards to the type of performance and direction style I'm talking about. But the other thing is the way it just kind of impacts the pacing, the flow of the film. It's just very interesting to me the way the whole thing kind of just, especially the first half of it, just really kind of just seamlessly moves through its story, and it's stitching together all these moments. And I think again, it's the way that his style, the style of directing I was talking about, almost needs this to sustain it, as well as the other way around. Like if you're going to have this sort of style of flow, you need the moments to kind of just feel like one sort of never-ending kind of back and forth and tick for tat and all this stuff. And, you're not really necessarily tracking some plot, really. So it's kind of like the style is kind of what I would call like a smooth montage. And it stitches together and seamlessly integrates all these episodes. Now, the overarching framing device, however, is, of course, Alma's narration and the way the film actually opens and the closes and all that. And it's very interesting because I don't think you flag it initially, certainly the first time, but she's talking to Dr. Hardy.
Yeah.
It's her sitting down, talking to Dr. Hardy. Mm-hmm. So the whole film is her telling Dr. Hardy, and you don't know what she's telling him yet, though. If you listen, especially once you know the ending, you can flag the clues of like what she's really actually trying to explain to him and why. This isn't just her like, let me tell you about my relationship with Reynolds in this like generalized way. She's trying to explain something very particular.
Yeah.
And it's a result. In order to do that, she feels like she needs to tell the whole story. So it's very interesting that way. And this ties into what I was saying, where you get back into the Rebecca and the genre stuff is there is I feel like a genuine degree of suspense to the film. Obviously now I've seen it. I know everything that's going to happen. So it doesn't always register to me, but I try to pay attention to it the best I could. And you're watching it for the first time. So you can kind of fill in how it worked for you. But like several of those moments, including like the first time she's poisoning the mushrooms and maybe even that second time, but just other stuff, nothing to even do with that. Some of the stuff about talking about his mother, the way he's very kind of creepy that first date with her. he's like, you have to carry a picture of your mother at all times. He keeps talking about his mother.
I carry a lock of my mother's hair
in my coat.
Jacket.
Which, by the way, when I have a very particular theory about all of that, but I'll get to it in a moment. But I'm just curious, like, did it feel that way to you? Did it feel suspenseful? Because I believe it's absolutely meant to. I mean, that ties into the Rebecca influence.
Yeah. I've definitely felt some moments of suspense, more than one for sure. And toward the end, especially when the mushrooms were involved, I think I gasped. I'm like,
yeah, that's
she's
good.
Gonna kill him. That's it. She's gonna kill him. He's dead. That's it. So no, that's. I'm like, wait, he's watching her make it with some suspicion from across the room. He's watching her make this omelet and look in the book, and I think he knows at that point.
Well, and another related question. Well, because I want to still pin before we talk about that sequence.
I might have to turn off the camera, but I'm going to stay on for a longer time unless you want to turn off the camera, and then I have to go soon.
Oh, no, I don't mind. You can drop the camera. Yeah, don't worry. We'll get through all this stuff.
Packing things moving, but yes. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. But I guess I was going to say, I'm curious. Did you think the film was at any point going to get more explicitly supernatural? I mean, because obviously you have the scene with the mother's ghost, but other than that, there's nothing like that. And that's about like almost 2/3 of the way into the film. So I'm just kind of wondering, did you think it was going to go there before that happened? And did you think after that it was going to go there even more?
After that, I did think it might go there more, until really toward the end when he asks her to marry him. And I'm like, oh, his mother's ghost was pushing him to get married. Basically, because she's there in the wedding dress, staring at the corner, staring at Alma, bringing him the tea, just staring. And if I know anything about mothers, if you're a certain age, they're going to be like, why aren't you talking about getting married? Or whatever, in a mom voice from the 50s. But yeah, I did expect maybe some more ghosts. I did expect a lot more murder a lot earlier on. I will say that.
Okay.
But at first when she poisoned him and I was like, oh, he just got sick, I was like, now what's going to happen?
Yeah. No.
Part of me was wondering, does Cecil know? Cyril was her. I can't remember.
Cyril. Like Siri, but with an L.
Oh, weird. Okay. Cyril. Yes. Does Cyril really know? Or does she have an inkling? Because she insists on this.
I don't think Cyril knows. I don't think Cyril knows anything about what's going on there until the last time we see her, which is after, Alma and them have a kid in that final montage. I don't think she knows at all. Now, obviously, I think she knows Reynolds.
Is the montage real, or is the montage in her head, in Alma's head?
The montage is. That's a good question, but I maintain the montage at the end is real, 100%. It's playing with time, but. It's real.
I think she says, this is what makes me think it's in her head, because she says something like, sometimes I get ahead of myself in our life together.
Yeah, but she
and
jumps.
That's when I'm showing her pushing the baby. And so I'm like, wait, are they not having a baby?
No. You're most, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I believe she even says that slightly after you see that. But either way, when she talks about the getting ahead of ourselves part, she starts talking about like even when they're old and even they die, and even after that, we don't see that. So I don't look at that as
she'll find him in any life.
Yeah. I don't look at that and say, oh, okay, that means that. I really think you're right that if you want to interpret that as in her imagination, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But I don't interpret it that way. I interpret that as like a genuine look into the near future, and some of the other scenes we see in that montage are the same thing, and that's kind of how the film ends. So I don't think that's the coda, that's the epilogue. Like I don't at all see that as like a fantasy sequence. Mm-hmm. Though again, I don't think it's like strictly wrong to go with that interpretation. But no, I want to get back to, because when we talk about when I asked those questions about the suspense, but also genre, because when PTA talks about Rebecca, or what people even get from that association and from what you see in the film, and is this idea of like a sort of, without getting explicitly supernatural, a sense of hauntedness, like this gothic romance kind of thing, is what they call the genre.
It's
so
like I can't remember, like a toxic relationships that are romantic in that way. Like it's like, oh, I hurt you, but you like it, and that's absolutely part of the genre. But I mean more just like tonally and aesthetically, and like with a sort of vibe way of like, you are in this, and it's a very British genre. Like the gothic romance thing is like haunted houses. Like, have you seen like The Haunting of Bly Manor, or like or I mean, you've read, or have you seen the movie Crimson Peak? The Del Toro movie with Tom Hiddleston.
I don't know if I have.
Not a good movie, but just, or not a. I don't.
It's ringing a bell, but I don't think I've seen it because I can't think of what happens.
I don't. So yeah, I'm assuming then gothic horror is not your thing, but like, this is a well studied genre and so forth that he's evoking with this. Okay. Rebecca itself is based off a book that is of this genre. So it's this idea of like sort of being haunted, but doesn't necessarily. Daphne de Maurier wrote the book. So it's written by a woman based on that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so there's a study tradition. I won't get too far into it, just to say that this idea of feeling cursed or haunted is obviously in the title, Phantom Thread. All these are things that are very much intentionally evoked and purposely used. Now, obviously what Alma finds is that one of the things she finds is that never curse thing. And there's this whole idea of the curse. And I want to talk about what that is, or what my interpretation of it is. I think on the surface, what you're talking about is this possible superstition of like, oh, Reynolds is quote cursed because he made his mother's wedding dress. And Cyril also is cursed because she helped him. And this is what Mrs. Blackwood told them. And that, if you make a wedding.
Is Cyril his sister?
Cyril's his sister. Yeah.
It's so weird because I didn't get that. I wondered, but I didn't get that.
No, she's his sister. That's his older sister.
Okay. Yeah.
So Cyril's his older sister. And she helped him make the dress for their mother, and then the mother died before she could be married in it.
Right.
And Mrs. Blackwood never married either, but she was telling him all these curses. Now, Reynolds is not a woman, nor is Reynolds like, I think particularly like, because really my take on this is less that the curse is this. I mean, you could say Reynolds really believes it or whatever, but to me, his believing it speaks more to a certain type of psychology that the film is, I think, really trying to speak on, which is that this curse, this belief in it, and this kind of like battle with it is kind of it stands in for his battle with, and what the curse actually does for him is it's another methodology of control. Because if he is cursed, then he doesn't have to deal with his own sort of like intensely specific needs. He doesn't have to. He's like, well, I'll never get married because I'm cursed. But you can also tell by other comments he makes, he does understand the reasons why he's quote an avowed bachelor, or why like it doesn't work for him, and the cycle that of those relationships continues is because.
Right.
He basically doesn't know how to make any room for this person in his life. And what inevitably happens is they start to become more desperate and needy as reaction to him pushing them away. And that just makes him despise them more. And Cyril has such a fucking in that she'll just like, well, let's cut him out because we need to continue with the work next. And he's just like, okay with that. But you can tell it depresses him because there's a part of him that genuinely, and you could say it's tied up in his mother too, genuinely wants to quote, break the curse or wants to feel like I could be happy. I can imagine myself happy with a woman, because he does genuinely have these feelings of happiness and joy with these women, and especially at first. But he's also, again, this sense of this curse is like, I know that this cycle is just going to go the way it goes. And each time, especially, and I think we are supposed to think that Alma has a specialness to him right away that gives him just hope, but that hope just brings forth more dread and frustration, because he's like, I have this hope that, like, you know, Alma could be the one, but I'm not any different. I'm the same me, and I'm never going to change. And as long as that's true, the cycle is going to kind of go the way it goes. Now, the fact that Alma gives the pushback she gives is entertaining and fun for her, and certainly fun for the movie, but it doesn't really
that's also why Cyril likes her.
Well, yeah, Cyril has more
Cyril
of a,
likes her because
Cyril
she has a little
her.
bit of Cyril in her. They're similar women.
Well, I would almost say, yeah, I think you're right. But I also think Alma probably learns a little from Cyril. Like she's smarter than the other girls in the past in a lot of ways.
100%.
Because she's like, obviously she's way smarter than him because she finally figures out a solution. But but that before we jump to that, she you know, she's very astute. She understands, oh, he's a fussy little child, and I kind of need to fight back, and that's the only way he'll respect me. And he enjoys fighting back. Even when he gets frustrated, there's a degree to which he obviously perversely enjoys it. And this, again, is brought out in that direction I'm talking about, where it's like Daniel Day-Lewis is having fun with it for the most part.
I think so too.
Yeah. So and Cyril's having fun with it despite her incredible erect stiffness. Like, you know, she's like, he likes a bit of belly.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. It's like, yeah.
Can't wait. I think that's her first test. She probably does that with all the girls that he dates. Like the first few things that she says to them, or maybe most of the things she says are cutting and belittling and degrading and make you question your self-worth. Like she's testing.
It's also, it's testing, but
she's
it's also
testing to see how hard they are.
Of course. But I also think I think just genuinely enjoys being mean.
Yeah. 100%.
Just on its own.
She actually is in control, and she knows it.
But no, I want to point this out.
It looks like he's in control, but she's in control.
I want to point this out because it is something embedded in the whole, like kind of an evidence of the approach that I'm talking about. So in this camera test reel that's on the Blu-ray, the reel ends with, based off the costuming, though the scene's completely different. So that just tells me that either they repeated the costuming, or this scene was going to be a totally different thing. Or there was some version of it that was where Reynolds, the scene where she's like, oh, you won't come out alive. There's a version where it's him and Alma sitting there and they get in a food fight. What? And Daniel Day-Lewis goes so far with it that he starts smearing jam on his own face. And Paul's just like laughing, and eventually Daniel actually breaks into laughter. But like, I wouldn't have been surprised if there's a version of it where he kept all that in, including that Daniel's laughter. So
my God, amazing.
Just another thing to keep in mind there. But you know, I think that Cyril has this incredible like desire to be mean for its own sake, I think. I want to getting back to what I mean about the got the cord and the curse thing. And we mentioned the keep your mother close, like the weird lock of hair he talks about in the lining. That's his, like, he's so attached to this sort of sense of like, and the curse is how I explain and cope with my existence, even if it's the opposite of coping. Like he literally is like, I must keep it with me. So there's this, but it also to some degree speaks to this sort of weird, deep hope he has that it will be broken, which is why he also writes in the never curse thing. But I think where it ultimately goes is Alma being Alma, you know, she is committed to winning this war. And that's what we see more and more, even when looks like she's really losing. Like she has her sassiness. She's like, like the whole thing with her, again, jumping ahead, the whole thing of her narrating it is like this, again, it's giving you the signs that she figures out what Reynolds is looking for, and not in the conventional sense, but this is the cinema of perverts. She's his dominatrix. I mean, that's what she is.
She really is.
Yeah, and so it took her a while to figure that out, but she's narrating from the perspective of she already is this, and is like, and I think the part of the thing is she doesn't just come across that. She comes across this because she realizes that she enjoys it too. There's this deeper connection. This is what I want to focus on. This is kind of how we can bring the whole thing home.
She even says, I want to see you helpless on your back.
Oh yeah.
So I can be the one.
Yes. Right. So this is really
important. I can be the only one.
Mm-hmm. So this is
to make you healthy.
This is how the whole room gets tied together here with all this stuff. Okay. Now, Alma is only able to ultimately discover this as her win, not because she's necessarily trying to solve Reynolds for Reynolds' sake, though she does do that. She's discovering, and what her ultimate try, and it's kind of them discovering together, because that's what happens when you have a real connection, or that's what happens when you really hit on it, is this is a two-sided street. It finally is, right? But that potential had to be there, and it had to be discovered organically, if you will. And that's why that scene is so brilliant. So just backing up, what she realizes, and there's a couple key moments. Like every time the film actually returns to the scene with Dr. Hardy or gives that narration, because it's very sparsely peppered through the structure. Mm-hmm. It is her before you know where it's going, but you'll understand when we pick up, kind of really highlighting the specific of like what it is that drove this. And it's like she realized Reynolds has a particular cycle, right? And she was trying to, when she tries to work against the cycle, it doesn't work. But when she works towards it, but like actually is able to, and she doesn't discover this till she finally does it, puts it under her particular control, not only does that allow her to get what she wants, but it also is giving Reynolds even more of what he wants and making it about her. And at the same time, she realizes finally that there is something where it's now about us and it's about me and I get my own enjoyment out of it. Now, but what is this cycle that I'm talking about? The cycle is
the creative cycle.
It's a creative cycle. Now, everything I'm about to say, I'll draw attention. Oh, okay, maybe I'll start here. Couple things from things that, again, PTA has admitted to. So it's not me putting it in there, but like, it's let the film kind of speaks for itself with regards to the whole picture of it. You know how he came up with this movie? He came up with this movie. He got sick. And he got sick.
Okay.
And Maya Ross was, she was like, so he felt like she was like, just so, gave him so much attention. It was so nice to him. And like, he was just like, this is amazing. I think I should be sick all the time. Basically, it was like, I should just be sick all the time. And while he was sick, he was watching Rebecca.
Oh my God.
And he was just like, that's it. I got it.
Figured it out.
I figured it out. So very, very, very cool origin story. They actually mentioned this right in the intro of this book, but I think first brought it up in a different interview, I remember. So yeah, he's just like sick watching Rebecca. He's like, God, I love my wife. She said like, cause she's taking my temperature and like tucking me into bed like I'm a little baby. So now how much further that went and in regards to this movie, I'll leave to your imagination. But the movie, and this is where also when I said, oh, this is a comparison to Crash, is what this story ultimately is a discovery and
of weird kinks,
of kink,
right?
And but the film actually really not only is doing this in the perversity of cinema sense that I was alluding to, though that's the vehicle, I think it's actually speaking to, well, obviously everyone understands, or most people understand, that kink, no matter what the kink is, usually has to do with a type of control or dynamic of power or control, right? So we have this guy who's a control freak, and this is another thing that people kind of know, that control freaks tend to have more of an interest in these types of things. They tend to develop more types of fetishes because they're control freaks. I mean, it almost doesn't require explanation. But there's something like, or people that have a lot of power too. And it's usually, because the sort of reversal of that, or the ability to put it under a different set of controls, is the type of control itself that just eases all the anxiety, usually holding all the power and control.
Finally, in an instance where you have whether you, in DanielDay-Lewis's character's case, whether you want to or not, when you're poisoned, you can't have any control.
Right.
You are forced. Your hand is forced. You're not choosing to go to a place in a situation where you don't have control. Your body is forcing you.
But as we see in the ending, and this is why
he chooses to. Yeah.
Well, not only does he choose, but he's performatively and joyously playing up the whole thing. But we see signs that he likes to do so before the kink develops into what it is, because this is one of the first clues that Alma develops. And that's what I'm saying about the narration and structure, is when Alma first realizes that there's this cycle, is after the initial, that first fashion week show, she's like, they're going to go to the country house. So that's part of the cycle, is that he wants to go to the country house after that.
Right.
And she's like, I'll drive. Because he was going to drive, and he's already just like so bent over and exhausted. And she like tucks him into bed, and she notices how he's just like really calling to her. And again, you can, when she talks about like a little baby, I mean, what do babies claw for? Their mothers. Yeah. Their mother's breasts specifically. So there's all this thing of like, he's a mommy, he's got mommy, she's a mama's boy. He's like, and so it all ties together like that. And, he feels like his mother left him, even though it was like her death, or that he doomed his mother, all these different things. Either way, he doesn't have her. And the closest thing he has is Cyril, which is why he's so clinging to her. But Cyril's incredibly icy and distant. And he never gets to be like that with Cyril. So he has this lingering, more base Freudian need to be this helpless little baby and have mommy take care of him. And Alma seemingly really responds to being in that role. But at first it's just like, wow, he's so sweet and tender. It's this that's how she first narrates it to him. It's like, he's so like this, right? It's not this there's no perversity to it initially.
No, it's just, he finally was giving me the affection that I wanted.
Right. So then beat number 2 is they kind of hit that breaking point where she's becoming incredibly frustrated and confused. She doesn't know what to do. She tries to do that surprise dinner. It backfires. And she realizes, because again, that's during the whole Barbara section, or the princess section. And she's like, he's really spiraling out of control in terms of like his stress. And she just realizes, well, what would happen if I made him sick? Then he might need me, and then he'll stop. And again, that's just kind of an experiment at that point, but it really works. And I think what we see for Reynolds, because he has that spiritual moment with his mother, is he kind of like can, by being even close to death, and he feels closer to where he wants to be in life, which is back with his mother, and can kind of get some absolution for himself. So there's all these different things going on. And I think Cyril, to some extent, doesn't think Alma poisoned him or anything, but Cyril does almost immediately see where this is going to some extent too. She doesn't want to push it because she doesn't want to lose her power position, but I think later on she realized that Alma's really not trying to take it. She's just trying to create something of her own, and so forth. But yeah, then when what happens after that? It was such a revelatory experience for Reynolds that he immediately is like, I can marry you now. I feel like, wow, Alma was there for me. And I feel that warmth like I've never felt before. And it's like this light. It's like, I don't know why I'm denying. It's like that come to Jesus euphoria. He's like, I don't know why I'm denying myself. I also thought it was
a little bit of like seeing the curse in his mom.
Yeah, he feels like it got lifted a little bit.
Yeah, he's like, well, maybe, maybe my mom's approving of this person.
Exactly.
Maybe she's saying that this girl's okay to marry.
Mm-hmm. So he immediately goes to marry her. Mm-hmm. But we see through that, again, smooth montage of events from the Alps vacation. Now, all of a sudden, she's buttering toast again, all the way to...
And he's annoyed already at the toast.
To the Christmas party where, he realizes that when they're in public together, he can't control her behavior, and he hates that. Then when it's like they're finally that whole New Year's episode too, it's like that's also one of just the funniest scenes, even before the little peek out thing you mentioned. So funny. Is he's sitting there, he's like listening to the radio, he's in his down clothes, he's like reading the newspaper, and she's like, I want to go dancing. He's like, when? She's like, right now? And he's like, why? And she's like, it's New Year's Eve. He's like, his idea of New Year's Eve is literally doing nothing, sitting at a small little table in the back kitchen. He said, I'm going to working. Yeah, sketching. So he's like, I'm working. Yeah. So he's already just like, he goes over to get her. And that's what then leads into and that whole sequence, the whole weird sort of dreamy kind of Chelsea party, which is really interesting from a 1950s perspective, because you get the impression, these are like, bohemian artist types who are a little more openly sexual. And he's like, Reynolds goes in there, but he's like staring, looking for Alma like a robot. He's ignoring all like the wildness around him. There's like people that seemingly are acting like openly gay and things like that. And he's just like, he's ignoring all that. He's just like, come home.
He's on a mission.
He's on a mission. That's all he wants. And that's what leads into that breaking point where he goes to Cyril. Now, and he's like, my feelings are, he feels like this is why it breaks for him, is because he feels like all this Alma stress, like I made a terrible mistake. All the Alma stress is impacting his work. It's so dramatic for him. He's like, I can't focus. I can't do anything because I feel like I fucked up and I thought the curse was broken, but now I realize this is why I don't do this shit, because I actually can't control this woman and it's a fucking nightmare. And I can't deal with not having perfect control over my life.
Everything.
And Alma obviously overhears it. And you don't know what she's thinking because she's very played in the background. And then we get that cut and moment that I talked about. It's so dramatic. She comes in, she slices the mushrooms. As he's sitting there, and this is, again, I want to describe this scene in best detail as I can, because the nuances of this scene is not only the culmination of all the story beats and the ending and the genius surprise and the perversity, but it's also the proof in the pudding that the PTA approach to the directing and acting style synthesizes into those dramatic theme moments as well, in a ways that makes the scene just one of the best scenes ever in a movie by far. So he sits there and he's just got this wry smile on his face as he's watching her cut the mushrooms. Now remember, they're in the country house.
Right.
So even though he was bitching to Cyril, he still took her there as part of his cycle. And I register that as less like I'm giving Alma another chance, even though technically he's doing that, as much as, and we never see any discussion between them, between those two scenes, as much as it's like, I'm so committed to the routine, and we all know Cyril does the dumping for him. So he's like, I just go through the routine until Cyril takes care of it. But he's like, he's obviously probably just paying a little more attention to Alma, and he can see, one, that she's cutting something up, but two, that she seemingly is trying to very subtly get his attention and draw his attention to what she's doing by being very loud with it, as we know, gets attention. But he doesn't get angry. Yeah. He doesn't get angry because he immediately, and again, this is what I'm saying, you're just watching DanielDay-Lewis's face. You're just watching how he's reacting to this. And again, the first time you see it, this is what I mean about suspense. You don't know where it's going. You obviously know what the mushrooms are. You know all that, but you don't know where it's going. So you're really trying to figure it out. And then when you do know where it's going, what you can pay attention to is see all the little minutia of how we get there. Because he's like looking at her, and he's almost immediately has this rise, or this, well, at first it's actually this very intense observation, like what the fuck is going on over there? Like very like curious.
Well, he probably sees her look at the book too.
Well, he sees her look at the book. He sees all that. So what's going on is he's probably piecing together finally, this bitch she poisoned me on purpose that last time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously what you're supposed to be thinking, because you're like, right.
Even when he chews the bite, when he chews the bite, it is so slow and deliberate. I'm like, oh, he knows, and he's going to spit it out and murder her.
Oh yeah, exactly. But even before that, when he's still just sitting in the chair before she's even served him. And I just, by the way, just gorgeous photography of the sort of mushroom omelet that she's making.
Oh yeah.
Classic. And yeah, I didn't mention this. I want to mention this too real quick.
It's awesome.
Side note, but a big thing is like I mentioned the visual. I think I just got taken off the point. The visual aspects of PTA's work here. He was his own DP essentially on this film. He didn't work with another DP.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I really liked one shot in particular. I think my favorite, like, director of photography shot in my mind.
Yeah.
I liked the nods to the past, specifically when he's driving in the old car.
Oh yeah.
Remember the old 50s style car where they would just like mount a camera on the car?
Oh yeah. Yes.
They have a shot that's like that. And I was like,
I love that.
Think of all the 1950s movies that I used to watch. And it's in the 50s.
All those movies. That's why, you know.
Yeah, of course. So I love those nods. There's a couple of other, but I don't have my notes written for me, but a couple of other things. But that one specifically, I really liked.
Believe me, I could just list every shot as my favorite shot if I really wanted to. But like, I just brought it out to say that, like, you know, he's developed, and then there's a whole sort of complicated thing going on with, you know, even his reaction to people saying, hey, you're your own DP. What's up with that? And he doesn't like to be credited as that. He's not actually credited as the director of photography. There just is no director of photography on the film. And he's very key to point out. It's like, I just know how to work directly with my lighting crew. So I just do it. And there's some stuff about how he maybe was doing that on his other films beforehand. And it's a complicated thing. So I don't want to get into it unless I were to give myself the time to really get into all the sort of thoughts about it. But I don't think we have time for that. Just to say that he's very concerned about the visual elements of the film, obviously, and knows what he's doing with it. But getting back to performance, and I'm saying you're seeing the editing, the performance, and the visuals all just at peak level in this sequence, right? Because you're getting those amazing, gorgeous close-ups. You're getting the expressions. But DanielDay-Lewis, he's like watching it with this intense, like suspicious kind of curiosity. And then you watch it just very slowly, again, before she's even served him, shift to this wry kind of smile. And you're watching it. You're probably more caught up in the suspense of like, oh my God, does he know? Is that going to cause some confrontation or fight or something? Something's going to happen, obviously. Murder, whatever. Yeah. Or she's going to murder him or whatever. But you're like, DanielDay-Lewis seems to be like he's almost ready to burst out laughing. What's going on? And I don't even think you can know. It just feels like weirdly tense in an unusual kind of way, not in the typical way, a more unusual kind of like, sort of something's going on here, but I don't know what kind of way. And you start to see Alma, the way Alma's glaring back at him, not like they're locking eyes, but she's like not smiling, but just like at this point, but just kind of like, oh, you don't even know, Buster. Like it makes you think probably. It does. You're like, she's not only gonna kill him, she's fucking can't wait to do it. Like she's like, I'm gonna fucking like poison you, bitch. And like
probably has a hole dug already.
And it feels almost a little fourth wall breaking in the sense that it's like so arch. But this is what I mean about the genius of this entire approach to this movie, is because it allows you to get into that level and allows the actors to get into the level. And I just imagine that the direction was just like, just really fucking chew it up with silence. Just like, And she eventually goes over, sits down. And at this point, DanielDay-Lewis, even when he sits down, he's just like, I know you're up to something. I know. And I know you're up to something. All right, let's see you do it. Let's see you do it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? That's kind of, again, he's not saying anything. He just sits down. He has this wry smile. And around this time, as she sits down too, but first she pours the water, makes all that noise, but he's not getting angry. He's not getting angry.
That's so weird. You know what? Now that you say that, I was wondering, I was like, why is she pouring the water so annoyingly and he's not snapping at her about it?
No. Because he realizes, she's doing it on purpose to piss him off. But what's happening, and you don't fully, I think, can hit it. Obviously, when you know, like I said, the ending, you can read back into it. But I think even for the first time, which it was for you, I imagine you're still not even thinking this. And But right around the time Alma sits down, and finally after pouring that water, and you're still watching his reaction, watching him not get mad, watching him have that wry little smile that gets.
She doesn't even pretend to eat, by the way. She doesn't even make herself to pretend that she's going to eat anything.
No, exactly. She's not serving herself, nothing. Increasingly wry and smile. You start to realize, especially when they cut back to Alma finally, she's not pissing him off.
Mm-hmm.
She's turning him on with the same things that normally piss him off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because one of the things you see her do when she's making the mushrooms that DayLewis caught, she grabs a big clump of butter, the thing he says he doesn't want too much of,
I know.
and throws it on there. Big clump. Like the most dramatic clump. And she's like staring at him like, yeah, butter, fuck you. And it's like, again, it's not angry. It's just that glare. The way Vicky Krieps plays this is just so masterful. She's like, that's right. Butter, you fucking bitch. like slides the butter off. But anyway, now they're back at the scene. You cut to her. She's just like staring at him, waiting for him to eat. And he's now staring at her back like, you want me to fucking eat this? That's what you want? You want me to eat this? And she's like staring at him like at first, like kind of being more harder to read. But then she cracks the biggest fucking smile you've ever seen. And it's a beautiful, glowing smile. And it makes you realize, I feel like PTA cast her, not just because of her austere look that's perfect for all those modeling shots, but like she has that sort of, she can make that smile.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he starts smiling back. And I think at that point he does chuckle into like actual laughter. And then he like takes the fork, carves the thing out, and he's like waving it around like in her face kind of before he takes a bite. But he's like just staring at her smiling. And then cuts to her, and she's like leaning in a little more, and she's doing that smile still, and then she said, and because the score is still going. She says you need to
take a break.
No, hold on. The score is still going. The score is going through all this. I forgot to mention that the big Baroque version of the Phantom Thread theme, and it finally hits a silence, and then she goes, "I want you flat on your back, helpless, tender, and open."
Mm-hmm.
And he's like still staring, smiling. And he goes, he takes a bite and goes, "Kiss me, my girl, before I get sick." And I will shit you not, the reaction in the theater when this happened the first time was like, and the score shoots up again, was like people were like, ah! like I don't even know if I can call it laughter. It was just like an eruption of like gasps and laughs and everything in between. And you just like know that, like, again, that's just a master at work. He's like sitting you there for 2 hours and 10 minutes before he lets you know what he's really doing. Like, let you know, and that's what I mean about the fourth wall breaking. The actors even know what he's really doing, and they're like, it's almost like less like they're doing it with each other, more like they know the audience is watching, even as they look at each other. They don't know yet. They don't know yet what we're gonna do. They don't know yet. They don't know yet.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, no, trust me. That's what I mean about this fourth wall just not mattering anymore type of approach. It's like, they don't know yet. Oh, they don't know yet. We know we got them. We know what we're gonna do. They don't fucking know yet. Boom, we hit them. And they lunge in with that kiss. And then it gets so quickly weird after that because they cut it into, he's like sitting on the thing with his bowl and he's like laughing. He's like, I love it.
My favorite thing about that scene is the preparedness.
Mm-hmm.
She put newspapers down on every inch of the bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. And that's when you realize, I mean, just the way she delivers that line, I want you to find her bed, all that stuff. She's figured out, like, her whole reaction, even beforehand, is like somewhere between that scene, that last scene, and this. She figured out, not only is this gonna work, but
he's gonna love me forever.
I
figured it out.
Yeah, I figured it out, and I already know I got him. He just doesn't know yet I got him. I got you. And it's like, it becomes this whole thing where it's like, it's just funny you know what I said. It's like, she's like, her reaction to that scene with Cyril is not like, turns out, was not like, oh my God, I'm going to lose him. Was like, oh, I've been getting lazy. But don't worry, lazy no more. It's like, I got you, bro. I got you. And you know what? You got me, because nothing is more fun. And I think probably the process of her getting the mushroom that day and then cutting off. I think that was, as she was going through that process, probably when she realized for herself, like, I fucking could do this all the time. I love this. This is great. This is the best thing that's ever happened. I love
mildly poisoning my lovers. Yeah. It's great.
Well, she even says, she says like, and she plays the narration as she's talking to Dr. Hardy. And then you realize all the context. She's basically like, oh, he could definitely die. I mean, it's fine though. This is just what we do. It's just like if we were into like choking or anything else, it's like, yeah, there's risks, but that's what we need. It's what we need.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's cool what we need.
He gave me a look, so I know he's cool with it. He loves me. He's cool with it.
It's perfect. It's perfect. He becomes this little baby, and he loves it so much. He's like, oh yes. He's like sitting over the shot of him sitting over with the bowl in his purple pajamas, being all giddy about throwing up is like, and her being all giddy about like, oh look, you're about to throw up.
Okay, I'll see you later.
It's like so.
Have fun on your dirty throw up newspapers.
Yeah. And you just realize that this is what the film's really trying to say too, is like, and as it goes into like, oh, we now have a child, it's like, yes, it's like this crazy perverse, like, especially in the way the movie delivers a kinky thing, but it's like, that's true love. Don't get it twisted. That's true love. That's true love. That is what true love looks like. It's not the boring Hallmark shit. It's the, don't worry, I'm your ride or die. I got you, bro shit.
I'll poison you as long as you want, and probably after. Even if you don't want, I'll probably still poison you.
It's like, that's what I'm saying, why I don't think that ending is fantasy, because I think it is meant to be like committing to the bit, being like, and everything was happily ever after that.
Oh my God, if he had done like a 1950s style, like a heart shape, with like a heart shape at the end is like the cutout.
He doesn't get that cute with it, but I really love the ending shot and ending title cards, because it is very 1950s style and more like austere. Like you are watching some Howell or Pressburger kind of like British cinema of the 1950s, like the title of Fan and Thread, just that final shot, he's fitting her in another dress. And it's just like this back to work, because the work at the end of the day is what matters. It's like this other stuff is just to allow me to be able to do my work finally without having this monkey on my back about feeling cursed or like I'll never have love in my life. And that's where it gets into the cycle, the whole cycle thing. And what I even said about, but something else that PTA has made kind of clear, and it's pretty obvious when you think about it from a personal perspective, is this guy's a director, writer. He spends like a year and a half, like cooped up writing stuff, and then spends like another year in production, and he basically barely seeing his family during that time, doesn't have a lot of patience for them. He's very, very dedicated to his work type of thing. But then when he's finally drained of all that, he comes home and it's like, now all of a sudden he's giving them all the attention in the world, because he's just like, he's ready for it. And it's like, I think it's probably easy for him to see how like, oh, well, if they also want to make me sick on purpose too, just saying. Not against it. Not against it. I think that's actually a pretty sweet life.
For 3 days. Yeah.
Yes.
No one will stop me from laying in bed. My own self won't stop me from laying in bed for 3 days if I'm sick.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, I think we've just about covered everything here that I have. There's obviously so much more that when you get into, again, the larger Paul Thomas Anderson canon, or maybe some details that are in this book that I have not been able to read. Oh, one other thing I got to do. If I know you're not on camera anymore, but if you want to look at your camera, this is another book I have, The Woman of Woodcock, which is the official, this is the official modeling book from the thing. It's gorgeous.
Oh my God. My God.
Yes. It's
show me what can you see one of the pages again?
Yeah. This is one of my favorites.
Oh my God, so good. That's from the photo shoot from the
Yes. Oh yeah.
From the scenes. Oh, so clever. I like that.
Yeah, here's some other ones.
It's kind of like that's borderline publishing behind the scenes photos.
Oh yeah, it's a little bit of both. They kind of did it all intentionally this way. Like, but you get like really close ups of all the seams and all the everything. We have stuff with the different models getting. Oh, here's an example we were talking about with all the core setting and stuff. I mean, it's, close ups of the costumes. You have These are my favorite, where you have Betty and like the other seamstress ladies.
Oh my God, amazing.
Yeah, and DanielDay-Lewis, I think, actually also studied with them and stuff. And like,
wow.
It's just like, yeah.
Well, all of the atelier houses have to wear the white coats.
Oh, yeah.
So
I didn't really know about that world. Really.
Yeah, you have to. Well, you don't like have to. It's just like you are kind of derelict if you don't follow that. It's like not wearing white to Wimbledon. Like you're just you're kind of a peasant if you don't know about this. If you're an atelier and don't wear the white coat, I mean.
Oh my God! I read this. Yeah. This is Barbara Rose on her bed, knocked out.
Oh my God! Amazing.
It's beautiful. It's incredibly wonderful book, like with all the hats and coats and.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's a
really good coffee table book. It's fun to flip through.
Yes. Well, I keep all these things. I'm a big collector of this type of stuff because I like to know everything about it and see all the images and just have it for reference. I mean, it comes in handy here, even though I was not able to read through the Masterworks book. But all right, Dana, any other thoughts you have on Phantom Thread before we go?
I think you pretty much covered it. I just wanted to look over.
I'll tell you, this velvet jacket's very warm right now. I'm kind of eager to get this shit off.
Let's see. No, we talked about that.
Oh, I guess I didn't talk too much about the music. I mentioned it very briefly, but the Johnny Greenwood score here is just especially notable. I mean, everyone that he's worked on, from There Will Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, now this. But this one, he really went. It's still very much in the same style with the very sort of high-end Baroqueness, but it kind of also, had a sweeter, softer, more romantic touch. And the piano touches, the more sort of jazzy 50s period touches, that than the sort of psychologically getting into your nerves score of the Master or There Will Be Blood. So yeah, and obviously Greenwood is from the UK, so there's that connection. But I like how PTA is always very loyal to the music people involved, because when he started with Hard 8, he had John Bryan and Michael Penn, and then Penn went on to do Boogie Nights, Bryan went on to do Magnolia and Punch Drunk Love. And, Amy Mann was also in there, kind of almost like a weird little clique in the 90s. And now he's got new cliques, but I like how he's a guy who's very his team is kind of his thing. And I appreciate that. But yeah, also the Dr. Hardy character is very interesting. That's played by Brendan Gleeson's son, not Domhnall Gleeson. I forget his name, but he's the other Gleeson son.
He's got a couple of sons that all act, right? Yeah,
he's a couple of sons that all act, but this one, I think his name, it's another hard to pronounce Irish name, but it's what is it? No, it's actually just Brian. What am I talking about? It's just Brian Gleeson.
I was going to say, I think the most confusing Irish name for me is a woman's name. It's Siobhan.
Oh, Siobhan. I love Siobhan, though.
Because it's got to be, I know one, or I used to know one. We went to school together, and it was because I read her name before I heard it. I read it on paper, and so I said it incorrectly.
Siobhan?
Yes. Yeah. I was like, Siobhan? Are we partners? Yeah. And then she's like, that's very wrong. And I'm like, oh shit, sorry.
Well, kind of Saoirse Ronan kind of really brought the weird Irish names that don't pronounce like you thought because they're, Gaelic based. And I respect her correcting everybody. Now everyone knows how to pronounce it. But I remember for years, no one got it right. She's like, Saoirse. That's not my good Irish accent. I actually have a good Irish accent. That's just my bad, being annoying Saoirse Ronan accent. But yeah, no, I just want to point out, because Dr. Hardy and his British accent that he's doing in this thing is the most amazing, oh yes, of course, I'm auditioning to be James Bond, kind of accent. And it's perfect for this doctor's again, being basically Dr. Freud, it turns out, just listening to Alma. She's like, he's the most demanding man. And he's like, yes, do tell more.
Yeah.
It's
Why
pretty,
is he just sitting there listening to this
well,
instead of being like,
Well, so it's at night. It's as far as that's the opening of the film. Is that light just slowly dissolving in, and Alma's close up, and it's like he's just like basically what she's telling him is like, listen, Doc, I know you're probably getting suspicious that I keep calling you because my husband's sick and might die. This is intentional. Like, she's like, I don't want you to like think I'm like poisoning my husband in a way that's maybe criminal, and or I don't want you to think that like you need to be in on it, is what she's basically saying. If this is gonna work, you gotta be in on it. I know it's a little weird, but just bear with me, I'll explain. And I think that's why I think there's an important moment where at the Christmas party after they get married, and at the turn, it's interpreted like the lady of the party is like, oh, look at Alma, she's barely talking to you. Like, and you're supposed to be almost saying DanielDay-Lewis is getting jealous. He's not, I don't think. I think it's just more like he doesn't like how he can't control Alma.
He can't control her. Yeah.
Yeah, less than jealousy.
Look, the optics are not.
Yeah, but I think what's the optics are not. That's exactly right. But I think what you're actually also supposed to be getting on that scene is Alma actually, I think, does have a thing for Dr. Hardy. Like, not in a way where it's like, I'm like gonna cheat on Reynolds, or looking for another relationship or threesome. It's more like
she wants to go to the party.
Yeah,
he represents the young guys that she might be dating, or the experience that she might be having had she not taken this first date with Reynolds.
Well, that's an interesting read.
She says because then she goes back and says, I want to go dancing.
Right. Yeah.
There's this party that I want to go to. And I don't know if it's necessarily Reynolds or the doctor specifically. I think it's the idea of she's missing out on some of the fun things of her youth.
When she gets to the party, we never see her with the doctor there.
We don't. She's by herself.
She's by herself. She's just dancing about. But no, I don't disagree necessarily with what you're saying. But I really want to hone in on the idea that I think it's like she does kind of have a thing for Dr. Hardy, and because of that, and he has a thing for her, it seems like.
I think that's true.
What ultimately amounts to, and why I think we see that, is because she kind of trusts him, and trusts him not in just like a I trust you way, but trusts him in like a dude, like we're into some kinky shit, and like even if like I'm not saying like we're gonna have sex, but I am saying like you kind of are having sex with us if you're the guy that comes over and checks him, because this is like
assisting.
Our thing.
Yeah.
So she is basically kind of the whole framing of the story is like, let me sit you down at night while we're just alone, doctor, and kind of very, very seductively explain to you what me and my husband get up to. So it is kind of like a swinging thing. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's all kind of
not a physical swinging thing, but a psychological. You're going to have to sign off on this for sure.
Yes.
Otherwise, I might accidentally kill him, or I might, Yeah.
And I think, again, it is very erotic between, that's what I'm saying. I think it is in that context, very erotic between Dr. Hardy and Alma. And I think part of what she's even doing there is like, it's similar to with Reynolds. It's like, I'm going to take that leap of faith, which is also a thing that subsexually the film is like basically saying like, hey, don't be afraid to take that leap with people. It might go some wild places that are good, that are actually good. Because she's basically like, just be honest about it. Because she's basically like, she could run the risk with Dr. Hardy's like, that's insane. I'm shutting this down. But she's basically like,
but he also
Doc's going to get it. Doc's going to be like, this is going to be like our dirty little secret. Like we're like, so in other words, she is trying to turn him on and is trying to be erotic with him. And is like, again, like this is like our sort of affair within this affair. Like this is our thing. Is like, I'm going to tell you everything about it. And like, I mean, like the way Dr. Hardy wants, because the first half of the movie, we don't see his reaction shot because you don't know the character exists. Then they introduce the character, and then later they show it, and it's like a reveal, like, oh, she's talking to Dr. Hardy. And it's like, when he's looking at you can tell he's like, oh my God. But not like, I don't even think, oh my God, because she hasn't even said the crazy parts of the story yet. It's like, oh my God. No, I think
it's like a curiosity.
Well, it's like, I think it's like an, oh my God, like, this woman is driving me wild thing. That's what I think.
Really?
Yes, 100%. And this, again, when I said the Freud metaphor, That's a lot. Have you ever seen A Dangerous Method?
No.
It's about Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, and Michael Fassbender plays Jung. Viggo Mortensen plays Freud.
Oh, you're kidding.
You have to see this. It's a Cronenberg movie. It's a David Cronenberg movie.
What?
Yeah. It was, so again, tying with the Crash and Cronenberg's kind of overall is the main girl is Keira Knightley, and Keira Knightley plays like a masochistic obsessive. So she's like just wants to be beaten and spanked, and there's all this stuff. It's like, so it's already kind of like that triangle there is what I'm talking about. Like it's all kind of baked into the cake, where it's like the therapist. And this is why I think some people discredit Freud's theories a little bit, because they're like, he's just another pervert trying to just justify his perversity, basically. But it's like, it is like this experience, like I'm sitting down and she's telling me all her fantasies. And it's like, it's fulfilling a fantasy of my own by her telling me her fantasy. She's like, like Keira Knightley's performance, she has a Russian accent. She's like, it excited me. And he's like, oh my God. It's like, it's all part of the experience is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But that'll do it. That'll do it, I think. That's a good note to end it on, and a reminder that maybe we should also cover A Dangerous Method at some point. Tie in the Crash, Phantom Thread, Dangerous Method triumvirate that I just outlined about the connections there.
I'm gonna feel so out of place with no kinks. Damn, I'm so boring.
Well, all I can say to that is, again, if you take the vibes of this movie, you're probably less boring than you think. You just got to discover it. All right, Dana, take care.
I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.
You get some women, take them to the Peachtree Dams. I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams. Do you know what I mean? You know why? It's a scary thing to give to a guy like me. Do you know what I mean? I say get liquored up and take them to the Peachtree Dams. Do you know what I mean? So get liquored up and take him to the Peachtree Dam. So get liquored up and take him to the Peachtree Dam. Do you know what I mean? You know why? Final cut. It's a scary thing to give to a guy like me.
I'll tell you the one thing that I do have that I didn't know was a kink.
Okay.
But apparently I have a kink.
What is it?
I like when a guy has really thick earlobes.
I've never heard this before. So you win an award just for originality. So I was
like, this is not a thing.
Thick earlobes.
I'm like, this is not a thing. Okay.
Well, do you like wrestlers with like cauliflower ear?
No. Not damaged earlobes. Like, you know the guy from, this is the only like big actor that has really big earlobes that I'm like, oh, earlobes. The guy from The Mummy who like protects them and is like, you cannot go here. This place is cursed. He has like really thick earlobes, and I think I was like 8 years old, and I was like, that guy's got hot ears. Hot ears that guy's got. So literally like a month ago at work at the bar, I walked into a conversation, and some girls and some guys, they were all just like, everybody has a kink, bartender, yes or no? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. And they're like, well, think of the weirdest thing that you're attracted to. And I thought about it for a time.
Yes.
Then came back and was like, thick ass earlobes, they're hot. And they were like, what? Same thing you said, weirdest kink of all time. So I guess
I don't think it's the weirdest kink of all time. Hold on, I didn't say that. It's just like original. I've never heard it before.
It's not like a ooh, like kink. It's more like that's hot.
It's really not like having sex after car crashes. Okay,
exactly. It's not like that, but it's more like ooh,
it's not like
he's got a job,
people.
He's got manners and thick earlobes. Done deal. Like,
there you go.
There you go. Yeah, that's kind of that. So maybe I do have something, but it's not the same.
I'd share something of mine, but they're not.
Make a short story about a girl with a kink about earlobes.
Oh yeah, I'll be into that.
And
well, there you go. Because like I'd say
no one will have ever seen.
I could share things, but one, They're very not PG. Not that they need to be for this, but like
mine are PG, so I share. So
yeah, you're PG, so you can share. Very not PG for the most part. And I'll just also say, like, if you go through my work, you will find, and increasingly probably in the future, signs of them. If I make some of these future scripts, is because they're in there for sure. Some of them, not all of them. Some, a lot of them. We'll see. But all right, Dana. That was a brilliant story. And anyone with big earlobes out there, thick earlobes.
Thick.
You know who to send your ear pics to now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rule number 1 of Cinphomaniac: tell everybody about Cinphomaniac. Your friends, family, anybody you know that's a little bit twisted in the head and loves films, definitely tell them. Rule number 2 of Cinphomaniac is tell everybody about Cinphomaniac.
Take them to the Peachtree Dance.